evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for Monday, February 24th, 2020. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Phyllis, could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Paulson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Lasis.
Here.
Trustee Sandy Hammerly.
Here.
Ken Lish.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Neil Shaw.
Here.
Loris Wazinski.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Dan Harvey.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden. Here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items on the agenda that board members would like to change, or items on the consent that board members would like to pull?
I'd like to pull 3F.
Okay. 3F, Mark. Okay.
And 3D.
Okay, we have 3B, D, and F are being pulled. Any other changes to the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Motion by Trustee Ryan, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis. All those in favor? All right, it passes unanimous. All right, next is public comment. If you'd like to have or make public comment on consent agenda, presentations, or non-agenda items, now is the time. So just give a little hand wave. I'll signal you to come up. Ms. Forshee.
Gladys Forshee, 404 South 3rd Avenue, and I'm not happy. Which is at the February 10th meeting in the town board minutes, it said that you had a big discussion about the public open record documents requests. And there were some comments about reading. I guess none of you read. Because I do open records requests, and I did an open record request for Superior Metropolitan District 1. Now, since in the January 13th, 2020 packet, it was listed that you're the board for Superior Metropolitan District 1. So you should be able to read that document. On page 2, it states that Original Town is included in that document. It's not just all Rock Creek. On page 19, it talks about street improvements and other public entities, which would include the street lights and the power lines in Original Town. In the 2020 budget, there is excess funding from Superior Metropolitan District 1. So that's extra dollars that can bury the power lines in Original Town. Because it's in the district, there's money there. It can replace the street lights on South 2nd Avenue that Boulder Creek Builders took out on public property. There are no street lights by Excel on South 2nd Avenue now. They have their fancy ones up, but no light out whatsoever. We want street lights. We had street lights. And one more time, I'm going to tell you, Boulder Creek Builders is no blessing and no benefit to the Original Town South Addition. It is one massive problem after another massive problem. Now there's money to put those street lights in. Excel didn't know those street lights were taken out until I called. And of course, threw a fit. We want street lights. We want the power lines buried. There's the money there to do it. Town board, read the documents.
Okay, thank you for the public comment. Any additional public comment?
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Brad Walker. I live in Superior. In addition, I fly out of Rocky Mountain Metro. My comments tonight are in relation to the approval of the agreement with ABCX2 for airport consulting. I'm a little surprised the city of Louisville will oversee the contract with input from the town of Superior. I have attended several meetings with Louisville and have found the Louisville City Council to be surprisingly uninformed about the basic details in relation to the airport and pilot operations. For example, Deb Fahey, Louisville City Council member, specifically asked staff to be certain to work to reduce the use of leaded aviation gas. Everyone agrees getting lead out of aviation gasoline is a noble endeavor, but the FAA has the sole authority in this regard, and it is not germane to working cooperatively with the pilot community in terms of noise mitigation. There are other glaring, uninformed comments also. For the sake of transparency, I will be directly making comments to the Louisville City Council about helping them get more engaged in this process and work in a cooperative manner. In addition, Superior is the most affected from the operations at Rocky Mountain Metro. This board and the airport consultants have done an excellent job of working cooperatively with the airport and pilot community to implement reasonable changes. I'm uncertain of the Louisville City Council shares that same ethos of working cooperatively. My perception is Louisville thinks they can escalate the political rhetoric and affect change that way. Like I said, it's my perception, and I will bring this to their attention. Any endeavor such as this will probably have negative consequences. Some of my neighbors will probably be speaking about how slow this process is going, as well as the implemented voluntary changes aren't to their liking. I understand this, but would remind this board that voluntary changes are the quickest and easiest way to affect change. Which brings me to my final statement. I want to speak the praises of ABCX2. They have always advocated for the interest of the town and kept a professional demeanor in their work. Our money has been well spent in having them help the town with airport noise mitigation. And so begins another year of working together cooperatively to implement change at Rocky Mountain Metro.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Good evening, everyone. TJ Sullivan, Executive Director of the Superior Chamber of Commerce. I just want to tell you about two things that I thought would be of interest to you. The first is we have a date and time for the Tesla Service and Sales Center ribbon cutting. They sprung it on us a little bit fast, so it's this Thursday evening from 5 to 7. It's open to the public. So anyone who's interested in finally getting a look inside and seeing what they're planning to do and meet the staff, most importantly, we hope that you'll attend and that the public will come and check it out. We think it's going to be the biggest ribbon cutting of the year just because of public interest. And thank you, Mayor Folsom, for agreeing to be there and helping us with that. The second thing I wanted to let you know about is this coming Saturday is Leap Day. February 29th. It's beautiful that it falls on a Saturday. There's a nationwide chamber effort called Leap of Kindness Day, in which chambers of commerce all over the country are doing community service events on that day. And we've chosen in Superior, along with 6 other chambers in the region, to do food drives to try to help address food insecurity. So we're going to be collecting spare change for Coal Creek Meals on Wheels and food items, non-perishable food items for Sister Carmen Community Center from 10 to 2 over at the Chamber Building next to Town Hall this Saturday from 10 to 2. And we've got a lot of great volunteers who are going to be there. We have Chip, the CU mascot, who's going to come and add some fun to the day. And so we hope that Superior residents will help us with this important thing. So thank you to all the sponsors who've rallied behind that, and to all the residents who seem pretty excited about clearing out those cabinets and change jars and helping to do something good for the community. So thank you very much.
Thanks, TJ. Additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is a presentation on Downtown Superior update and sign program presentation.
Thanks, Mayor. Bill Jinks is here from RC Superior. He's going to give a general project update and then a review of their sign package that was included in your packet.
That looks like it. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you. Bill Jenks, RC Superior. Happy to be back giving you another update on the general project. I was going to see if we can go like full screen here. Anyway, oh, there we go. All right. So, going to try to not take too much time here, but give you a nice comprehensive overview of the project. It's been a little while since our last general update, so happy to answer any questions as we go through or at the end of this presentation. And then, like Matt said, we'll get into the signage after that. So first, I'll give you a general update on final development plans and development activity, much of which you already know, but it's a nice reminder. And then at the end, I'll give you a quick update on the public financing process, which we had that last hearing in December about the bond we were raising. So first, all development activity. These are the approved PD uses. I actually need to update this map, so my apologies. This is the Amendment 3 instead of Amendment 4, but you all know the PD uses. So just as a reminder, this is a map of all the final development plans that were approved as of December 2018, so about a year and a couple months ago. And then this is the map of what we have approved today. So at the beginning of last year, I came and said we have a lot of work to do over 2019. And you know, I congratulate and appreciate the town board's work in getting through all of that. In the past year, we've gotten up to about 85% of the developable area of downtown Superior approved. And all of that's under sales contracts or already sold to builders. So it's major step forward. We're going to see a lot of growth and construction here now that we have these approvals done. So that's all very, very good news. And that all did impact the project's ability to get TIF bond financing at the end of last year. So just to walk through everything in a little bit more detail, as you know, the Element Hotel closed on its land in February of 17 and opened in February of 19. They're doing great. If you haven't been over there, I suggest you go by and just at least say hi. It's a beautiful facility, and I think it's doing rather well. Medical office building, they closed on their land in 2017 and opened in the beginning of 2018. They're about 90% leased now. They have one final space that's somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 square feet available. So if you know any medical office users, feel free to shoot them over. FDP1 Phase 1 is the Main Street, completed February of 18. Block 13 and 25 was our first residential development, completed early 2019 at the beginning of last year. And then Village Green Park we completed in August of last year, which is looking great. So I've got a couple of pictures here. Just, I know a lot of you have been through the site, but just so everyone can see. The Element Hotel, this is the lobby of the Element Hotel with the pool directly outside there. The glamour shop for the medical center and our public parking structure. This is the south end of Village Green Park with Block 13 in the background and the Remington single-family homes there, with the playground at the other end of the park, again looking back towards Block 13 and 25, which today I was actually out there and already this looks a lot different. Block 25 is completely framed up right here, and then Thrive is already done with their units over here, so this is all really filling in nicely. The playground looking into the Toll Brothers site. And then Promenade with the Wonderland Townhomes lining Promenade and some of our signage and improvements on Main Street. And then the Remington, this is the internal courtyard in Block 13 if you haven't walked through there. It's great. So then Thrive Homes, Blocks 14 and 15, 54 townhomes were approved in August of last year. We've got Intrax under construction right now, so they're putting in all the sewer and underground utilities. We'll be installing the alleys over the next couple of months, and then Thrive's expected to close on Block 14 and continue building vertical homes there starting in April or May. And if you've been out there recently, you've seen that Block 26 is all but built out. I think they've completed the first couple of buildings, and all of them are at least in vertical framing stages. And the model home is open. If you haven't been to it yet, you should go check that out. It's pretty nice. It's the the home at the very far end, north end of the block right there. And that's a picture of that model home in Block 26. And then Toll Brothers, we approved in September of last year. They just closed on the 18th on the land. So they're commencing grading right about now. If they're not out there yet, they will be in the next week or two. And they have some dirt work to do around the existing irrigation ditch down at the south end of the block. So any residents that are listening that live in Rock Creek here, you'll see those tractors out there over the next couple of months. They're going to start at the south end with that ditch work and then be working on grading the entire site over the next probably 3 to 4 months. And then they'll start with vertical improvements from there, working their way from the north down to the south. And then the mixed-use town core, Morgan Ranch, we obviously got approved December of 2019 last year. We're currently processing the building permits for that and planning to start construction around the middle of this year, probably 3 to 4 months out from start of construction there. So that's going great. We're really excited about that project. We're already getting some interest from retailers, and it's really it's exciting to see that coming together. So we're excited to bring that to the actual starting line and get that out of the ground. And that's just a picture from the approval of Morgan Ranch of what's to come. So then getting into what's next, we do already have Block 25 approved with Remington Homes. They're building homes there right now. I'm expecting the final homes to complete on this block December of 21, so about a year and a half or a little over 2 or a little less than 2 years away from now. They're already framing the first homes on the lower end of Block 25. We've finished the end tracks, all the alleys and everything are done. We'll come back and finish the landscaping in that block, either at the end of this year or potentially the beginning of the following year, just depending on how fast they get foundations in. And then they'll be building the vertical homes and selling those through the end of 21. And then the only active FDP that we're working on right now that you'll see hopefully in the next couple of weeks or months, I'm not sure if that's on the schedule yet, is the Block 27, Block 26 and 27 Remington FDP for the single family homes. This is the lowest density project in the whole project. It's I think a 55 foot by 70 foot lot, so much bigger lots than most of our other product, and a very traditional 2-story front loaded home. It is a little bit unique from the rest of our product in that it is a front loaded home because of the way the PD and the street grid was designed originally. There's no alleys behind these lots. Part of that was in response to the Rock Creek neighbors not wanting any alleys back there. And so the homes will be front loaded off of the right of way. So you'll see a garage in the front of the house, which most of our other homes have garages on an alley in the rear. But that's just the one unique piece of that. But they're also the biggest product, so it's kind of an outlier for the project. The Marshall Road Bridge, we have an FDP submittal coming in the next couple of weeks. We do have a development agreement on this per our meeting, I think in December, about the bonds when we talked about that. So we have a signed development agreement. We have a deadline of April 30th to get an FDP application into you. We're planning to do it in the next couple of weeks, certainly before the end of March. The approval target is June. The deadline for that is July. And then we target having permits and bids in to actually build it by October of this year, about 3 to 4 months after the approval. And then target start of construction by the end of this year and complete by September of next year, 2021. The deadline for that per the development agreement is December of 2021. So we're beating that by a bit so far with a fair amount of safety. Parks 1 and 2 are currently completing construction documents and budgeting based on the original FDP that was approved a year or two ago. Our designers are working with town staff on that. We're targeting 100% CDs by early this summer, permits by end of the summer, and then start construction this fall, September, October, and complete by the fall of the following year, 2021. Which lines up really well with the delivery of the Plaza Promenade and the first buildings in Morgan Ranch. So that's kind of project development update. Any questions on that before I move on to the next section?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate the you coming to give us the update tonight. I noticed there wasn't any update on the timelines for blocks 2, 5, and 8. Can you speak to your overall goal for the timeline on those blocks?
Yeah, we're working on those blocks. As you know, except for the Morgan Ranch project, we're just the land developer, so we improve the land and then sell it. We do have those blocks on the market, targeting theater use, hotel use, and build-to-suit office for like a large office tenant. We've entertained a couple of sort of interested parties, but haven't really gotten to a final offer stage. So we're working on it. I think the real answer is that, you know, while we all know how far Morgan Ranch has come and that it's about to start, the general market typically doesn't really understand that until you see construction start and things come out of the ground. So I think as we get Morgan Ranch started and actual vertical, we'll get a lot more interest on blocks 2, 5, and 8 as you see that commercial space coming along Main Street. But we're working on it. On that one, I'm really the land developer, so it's finding a vertical developer to do a deal with, and it's uncertain.
Okay.
Same thing on the second hotel pad. We have a hotel pad available here.
And can you speak to the time of the construction of Central Park?
Yeah, so that one, you know, it's on our radar. We're really focused right now on Parks 1 and 2, which we do have the funding for. I'll get into the public financing in the next slide that starts to talk about that. So let me answer that more with the next slide.
That's fine. So one more before we switch over then. As part of the Toll Brothers FDP, there was an agreement to make sure that there was pedestrian connections from the Rock Creek area into downtown Superior, and it was going to connect, from my understanding, through the Lanterns development through Tract H. Can you give us an update on that connection, and then also the park that was also approved to go in that area, and when we can expect that to be constructed as well?
Yeah, and I'll have to, if you know them off the top of your head, please remind me. I'll have to review the approval and conditions to see if there were any deadlines on those. Obviously, we're going to meet whatever hard deadlines were established in there. Just logistically speaking, I'll need to talk to Toll Brothers. I had a quick call with them after their closing a couple of days ago, but obviously they're doing a lot of work on this irrigation ditch that goes right across there. It wouldn't make much sense to make the pedestrian connection until that grading work is done, which should happen in the next couple of months. But aside from that, I'll have to get an update from them on what their plan is for timing on that.
I believe verbally, that one might have been a verbal commitment on your behalf, and I think that one was to be open for this year. I don't know if we set specific months or anything, and I believe there was a little bit more flexibility with the Toll Brothers for the park. I think we said either phase 1 or phase 2 of that, but it would just seem if we're going to put some construction work down there for the trail, might as well do the park too, so we don't have to close the trail again when we put the park in later.
Yeah, and I'll make sure they got those on my update slides for next time.
Okay, I think that's all I have on development.
Bill?
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Yeah, I want to reinforce the connectivity, right? So this is how many years has the sports stable been open now? This will be
I think they opened in 17, so 3 years.
No.
I started in 16, and it wasn't open yet.
Yeah. I think it's 15. Yeah, 15.
Maybe it was 16. I started in January 16, and it wasn't open yet.
You're 2016.
Okay.
Yep.
So this will be potentially the 4th year where, the sports stable, there's a lot of kids that are getting there every day for hockey, basketball, soccer, pickleball, whatever else. I continue to say we build in this community roads first and pedestrians second, and there is no safe way for a kid to ride their bike from Rock Creek, or frankly an adult to ride their bike from Rock Creek to the sports stable without going on a relatively narrow sidewalk on McCaslin. And
Is there any way to get onto the, because we do have a connection to the bikeway here, is that?
there is right, we're dependent upon you to help us with that connection. But no, there's no way to get currently from Rock Creek without going over the bridge into Louisville and looping back around. So you, as the master developer for all of those blocks, if you had a home, you would build a temporary road and made sure the cars could get on that temporary road. We have a destination for our kids and no way to get there. I talk about this at least twice a year, and it's beginning to be embarrassing that we have no path from Rock Creek, where the majority of our residents live, to the sports stable, which is a destination. So I'm asking you to work with town staff, to work with the builders, find some creative way, whether or not it's permanent or temporary, so a kid or a family or an adult or whoever can ride their bike or walk without going down McCaslin. It seems to be a reasonable request. And
Yeah. And I think what we decided on last time we talked about this was that connection into Tract H and then to a pedestrian connection into Block 27 here, which is part of the Remington proposal. I'm happy to get that in as soon as we can. Working with Toll on what they're doing down here.
I don't want to, safety first, of course. I don't want anybody going through active construction zones.
Right.
But the construction is obviously going to be phased.
Yeah.
My instincts tell me that if somebody looked at a map and some construction plans, they'd find a way.
No, we have right now, we have this road is open, this road is open. Basically, all we need to do is get, so, and there's a pedestrian trail on Tract H. All we need to do, I think, do you have the connection from Coal Creek onto that Tract H path now? No, not yet. So all that needs to happen is a connection from Coal Creek or wherever you want onto that existing Tract H trail, and then a lateral connection from that Tract H trail to that corner, right? Then this splits, this is the edge of the Remington Block 27 FDP proposal that you'll see in the next, whenever that's coming soon.
Great, that'd be helpful.
So that's this year, I would say.
Great, thanks.
As long as that FDP gets done soon.
Another question, we've received some emails from a resident who's disappointed with kind of the trash and mice and rats that are down there. I think some of those complaints that are going, this is from an email, so I can't validate the number of complaints, but hundreds of complaints that are going into the town instead of going into the district. Can you talk a little bit about whether or not you've experienced, whether or not you're struggling with trash pickup, snow removal, just keeping the site clean?
So I'm only aware of some complaints we got around the doggy stations where the dog waste was more than our current pickup schedule could handle. The Metro District controls that and contracts with a third-party vendor, which has a really funny name, and I forget what it is, something about doo-doo pickup. But they did increase their schedule in response to that email. The Metro District, Special District Management Services is a third party who manages the districts. So any complaints should go to them, and I know they are addressing them as quickly as they can. And from my perspective, I've seen those problems pop up and be responded to and fixed. If there's anything that's chronic that's not being fixed, I welcome contact to me, and I can get to the bottom of it. It seems to be sort of an ongoing education issue, just to make residents aware of who the Metro District is and how to contact them, and to make that open dialogue. I know the Metro District's been trying to host some info sessions, and maybe we should encourage them to do that more. I can certainly bring that up in the next Metro District meeting, because the Metro District is there to act, like an association acts a lot of the time, and to help respond to these problems. And so they certainly don't mean to have any issue or have trash pickup issues or anything like that. So I will bring it up at the next Metro District hearing and see what we can do to help better educate folks.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Bill, I was going to ask you about Metro Districts a little bit later, but since we're on the topic, am I correct in understanding that there's a election for the Metro Districts this upcoming May?
I believe that's correct.
And with the structure of the Metro Districts, Is it possible for any resident that's within their designated metro district to run and be elected to the board?
I believe so. You'll have to, again, you've got to, I'm not a Metro District expert. There are rules and term limits and all of that I don't know right now, but I'm fairly certain that any resident of that district can run this May for a seat on the board.
If, when you bring it up at the next hearing, in discussing the engagement for residents, it'd be nice to add to that engagement a bit of understanding about the governance of the Metro District and that they too have the ability to run and represent themselves.
Sure. All right. Any questions before I go on to the financing section? And it's really just one slide. It won't take long. So just an update on the public improvements financing update. This goes back to the tax increment financing that was approved with the original entitlements, with the development agreement and the cost sharing agreement from 2013. So the original cost sharing agreement set a maximum budget of eligible costs for public improvements of $145 million. Our current project budget estimates that it's going to take $131 million to finish all of the public improvements. So we're about $14 million under that original 2013 budget. A lot of that is just because the density as proposed and in all of our current estimations is lower than the actual maximum cap of the PD entitlements. So the original PD allowed up to 1,400 units and something like 1 million square feet of commercial space. We're ending up with closer to 1,100, 1,200 residential units and a couple 100,000 square feet of commercial space, just as a function of development density and market demands. And so a lot of that is due to the sort of smaller, less dense project, results in lower public costs. Now we've spent, of that 131 total budget, we've spent about 49.2, and that's in the dark blue bar here. So we've got 81 to go that'll be built out over the next few years. Now, and that's sort of the uses table. Looking at the funding sources for the public infrastructure, we raised $18.2 million of TIF bonds in 2015, refinanced that just in December with an additional 77.8. And so that gets us probably, what is that, 80% of the way towards the total. There is $35 million worth of anticipated public costs, which isn't funded by any of those existing bonds. We're working right now, excuse me, on a structure which would allow RC Superior to loan that remaining 35 to the districts in order to finish all of the public improvements, and that includes things like Central Park and all of the other things that aren't funded to date that are in this remaining 35. So our bond counsel and all those same folks that you heard from in December are working on a new financing plan that'll spell that out for you and make a request to the board to approve that financing plan so that RC Superior can loan the project that remaining 35, and then we'll be 100% funded for all of the public improvements. So pretty exciting. we did it. Almost.
Do you have a timeline for that?
For the financing plan?
Yeah.
I would guess it comes to you in the next 2 months. We'll probably have it into staff in the next month or so and have some review before it comes to you. And that's all I've got. So any questions on any of that before we get into signage application?
I've got one final, more of a comment than a question, and I just want to make sure you're aware of it. We're getting the final deliverable for our placemaking master plan tonight. Within the deliverable, there's a recommendation directly to us, the town board, related to food trucks and markets, and just let me read it to you so you can hear the exact words. Legal covenants at Superior's existing commercial centers are barriers to hosting food trucks or markets. Based on public engagement for the placemaking master plan, these were highly sought after events, and accordingly, these covenants serve as barriers to fulfilling the desires of Superior residents. Based on these findings, we recommend that the town and board establish a legal arrangement that explicitly permits food trucks and markets in downtown Superior. I don't think we need an answer tonight, but that's something I would certainly like to discuss and make sure we have flexibility for to ensure we're meeting the needs of our residents in the future.
Yeah, no, and the quick answer to that, I will, it's a good note, and I agree with you, and we're actually drafting our form lease for the commercial spaces in downtown Superior right now, so it's perfect time. I'll make sure to add some language on that. But even without that, it's a different situation from Superior Marketplace, for example, because the town owns that right-of-way, the public road. So really, even if we didn't like it or the tenants didn't like it, we don't own the public right-of-way. The town owns the public right-of-way, and you can control it as such. And so even without any lease agreements, I'm relatively certain you could host a public event, at least on the town's right-of-way, which is basically the parking to the parking, not sidewalks or Metro District. But as you know, we're in favor of that kind of event too. We like the activity and the energy that brings. So I'll certainly make a note to add similar language to our lease documents so that we can make sure we can utilize the plaza and all of the Metro District areas also. All right.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Should we move on to signage, or you want to, or is there anything else? Okay. Come on in. So I'm going to introduce Kevin Pedlin with 505. He's the signage designer who's been working on all the beautiful plans you've seen. He's going to walk you through the package that you have in front of you, and then I'm obviously here for any questions. I do want to say, just as a quick introduction, let's see. For anybody who's not in specifically the retail real estate world, signage, and I was the same way before I really got entrenched in the retail world. Signage seems like sort of an afterthought, or you don't really think about it that much. I'll tell you, when we're trying to lease these spaces, signage is one of the most important considerations for tenants who are looking at downtown Superior or any other site. It's really traffic numbers, visibility, and signage. And so to the extent this package is providing opportunities for really clear, really visible tenant signage, that only goes to the goal that we all have of bringing high quality retail and restaurants to the project. So there's always obviously considerations of lighting and how it looks and size and adjacency and everything, and we want to be considerate to all of those considerations. We're happy to hear any concerns anybody has, but we also ask that you think, as part of the economic development goals of the town, think about the tenants who are looking at downtown Superior as we're trying to lease high quality restaurants and retail, and just know that the more signage you can give them and the bigger and more visible it is, the easier it's going to be for us to attract those kind of tenants. So it is very, very important, especially with visibility from 36. And so with that, I'll let Kevin get into it, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Good evening. Let me see here. Let me advance this. Oh, perfect. So we've been working with Bill the past couple of years on the overall program as development has been occurring. And you'll note what we have out there now is part of that. Currently, the entry at Marshall Road and the main entry up further south on McCaslin has been undergoing construction, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. And eventually, when that's completed, there will be, as development ensues, components added to that, and this package will show that in the future sense. So the master plan intent is, as Bill stated, it's there to create a framework for businesses and everybody that are looking to come to the site and occupy it to promote their brand. And as well, I think it's a way for the town to understand who's coming and to welcome them in and provide a simple means of approval for planning. And so, as any good master plan does, it prevents confusion for the users. So let me just jump right into so the plan as we've set it up is, the entry that I described right here and right here is being put in as we speak. And I don't know what dates we want to offer for that. Is that up for discussion? Completion?
David had a date the other day. You can say it.
I want it done now. I've been waiting since December for it to be done, especially this one here, as we know, with Tesla being completed. I just wasn't sure if you had it, you heard. Yeah. But it's imminent.
It is. And it's taken longer than we wanted to for those signs. I will tell you that the A2 sign at the Tesla, in front of the Tesla there,
yeah.
We actually had the letters up for that and then took them back down because we were not happy with the way the
finish
back of the signs were looking. So it was just a quality control issue and we wanted to fix it. They're both going to get installed now at the same time. I believe certainly by the end of next month.
Yeah, within a few weeks is what I understand. I haven't been given an exact date. So with that, and that is a phased approach. So let's jump ahead to here. Yeah, let's see. Is it? I don't know how to zoom out on this. How do you zoom out?
Hold control and scroll wheel.
Yeah, let's just so the phasing is the wall with the letters will be in first, and then the boulders come in later, where tenant exposure is needed. At that time, those will be addressed. We wouldn't have these large, massive boulders up without names on them, in other words. That's the main point. And to point out, in these, as they come online, we have criteria on the scale and the limits, which is specifically stated on each sheet for a tenant per panel. And over the use of their signage, they are changeable. So if whoever takes on control of change out, whether it's Bill or whomever else, the developer on the development team, they would orchestrate a change out panel with a new tenant. And in that case, there could be a blank panel while other tenant names are there. So it could, the point I'm trying to make is you wouldn't have this look for the face of the sign over the course of its lifespan.
And I just want to point out, we did bring these as well as a bunch of iterations of these signs to the board a year and a half or a while ago. And it was determined ultimately that these signs were consistent with the existing PD. There's some language about signage in these locations. So these signs are actually kind of approved by right under the PD. They're really in this package for reference.
Right.
This package adds some things like the sign that you'll see on 36 and some other locations which aren't necessarily mentioned anywhere in the PD. And as well as all the tenant signage criteria as far as size and type of signs and everything. And so we really just wanted to show you this and get your approval on this as we start showing it to all of our tenants who are actually going to use it to design their signage.
So the variation in scale from north to south at the Tesla entry at Marshall, there's a smaller version of it that, again, wouldn't occur until we start having leases or uses defined, that where they would have agreements, and those agreements are, as you spoke to, really critical in the early stages of the development or these next few months, really. So this wall with these set of letters are in, and we had them remove them, and they're reworking them and getting them perfect. So because they're visible from the back, as they would be here too. This sign will be slightly visible, and we want to make sure those are perfect, because once those are in, they're in. So any questions on those two entry features? Because those are really the front door to the project, and we've worked hard on them to make sure that those are iconic and not just a traditional a mixed-use development entry in its scope. It's an aesthetic that requires good landscaping and lighting, a seasonal appearance that really I think is going to be quite striking.
Just a quick question, and I'm not a sign guy, so I appreciate this.
Yeah.
And take this with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
The intersection of Marshall and McCaslin, we've got two signs that say Superior, and the font is very different. You know, downtown one, it's in cursive, which means my teenagers can't read it, but that's besides the point. But across, the town just installed its, First Monument sign, and it's a very different logo.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't really think about it, but we had a ProStack meeting, the Parks and Recreation Open Space Trails Committee.
Right.
They were kind of like totally perplexed why we would allow two wildly different signs that close to one another. And until they pointed out, it didn't even faze me. But it does, just walk me through, the relative difference. Because, the whole town is Superior, but then we've got a very different sort of view on the town, especially with that logo right there.
Right. Well, that's a case of varied branding and districting. Essentially, this is a district within the town that's been given a name that just so happens to be the same as the town's name. But I think that over time, people begin to read and understand things as they mature.
Okay.
I don't mean to dismiss it, because I think that it is a good point that that you've heard, and I would say, I guess my interpretation of it is that because we don't really know what the what the downtown Superior portion will ultimately be. Let's say people don't have these books, they don't have the thing that Bill presented tonight, so they aren't aware of how it's going to mature, and I'm not sure how to. I don't know how to really summarize it, but it's branded space, you know.
Yeah, and to me, there's really no issue there. I mean, this is a district of the town. In a lot of other large mixed-use projects, I know this is not exactly analogous, but like the Grove in Los Angeles or those kind of things.
Right.
The Los Angeles logo for the city is not the same as the Los Angeles on the logo for the Grove. It's a piece of the town, and I think here we wanted to, obviously by the size and by the block text, we wanted to emphasize this is downtown, and that's the most important part of it. And Superior is it's obviously in Superior.
It's a resident of, yeah.
So it's just different branding. We've had this logo and this brand since 2016, and it's very consistent throughout all of our website and branding and all of the leasing negotiations and everything that we do. So I don't think it's a problem that you have a different Superior here as your sign.
Thank you.
Well, and again, the forms that I see that the town has done are somewhat analogous to this in their spirit. And I don't know, I think that the variation is a good thing, personally.
Yeah, I think that the only aspect that makes it challenging is the proximity, right? I mean, it's literally,
right on
100
McCaslin.
feet across, like diagonal from one another. If there's like a quarter-mile separation, I don't think anyone would notice the difference.
Although, I was happy to see that those new signs have a very similar aesthetic to these Corten boulders. So I think there's visual tie there that is going to work great. I think it's going to look great, and there's no need to have the same exact font on every brand within the town.
Yeah. So the next item that we wanted to bring in front of this is this pylon that we're looking at locating along 36.
Sorry, going back to the previous signs for a minute.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you're not going to necessarily add the big structures behind downtown Superior until there are enough tenants there. So what is that? 2 tenants? Is that we need all 6 or 4 to be filled, or when would we?
Quite honestly, it's probably 1.
Okay. Okay.
As soon as there's a tenant to put on.
As soon as you get an agreement, then
Okay. No problem. Just wanted to check on that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Those will go up at the same time as the first phase of downtown Superior. Once we have some tenants, I've already promised one of those spaces to somebody, and so it'll just be part of the construction project with the Morgan Ranch vertical.
So this this is another example of what Bill pointed out as a way of creating exposure for the uses that we're going to have here, which could include in theater, could include obviously more retail and more restaurants. And then what we've been talking about is allowing for a display, a video display that could promote community events beyond just specific tenants. So the 4th of July parade was one that we use as an example here to show, as opposed to a theater poster that you would, obviously that would be shown if they were going to pay for that. And so it's a mechanism to promote their business and the town's spirit and goings on. And so we visualize this as a two-sided westbound and eastbound visible element on 36. And you can cite examples that we're seeing now in the environment going up and down 36 where this is commonplace now. The scale at 90 feet is needed for visibility to be effective as you consider the grade changes and the hillside approach going in each direction, whether you're going east or west. So at this moment, we're foreseeing the need to have a maximum of about 6 nameplates. I'll call them nameplates for future tenants there, and then the name, the project name, and then the video space is there. So there are other things, other details that we could get into as far as what this butterfly roof, it could accommodate solar panels to power the thing, which is a good thing to consider. Do we want to talk about location and presence according to let's see if we can call that PDF up. There was a...
Is it one that
That's it. Yeah. So these are some rendered views that will indicate, some height sign. The sign with it located here. This is 90 feet. With this at 45, you can see where its proximity is in relation to the building. Optically, it doesn't seem to be that much higher. So what we're doing is studying a couple different locations for it and considering best visibility, and we'll need to undergo some more rigor in terms of exactly where it needs to go, obviously.
So optically, it's not higher, but I mean, physically, it's like 30 feet higher than the garage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's...
Yeah. And so these studies also, eventually, if this were to get erected, we would want to do a mock-up where they would take a crane and position it to ensure visibility and, constraint.
So just to confirm, you said that the sign is 90 feet and the building is 45?
Yeah, we know that this height right here at this line is about 40 to 48 feet at a datum. The height that we show this at is 90. And because the location of that pylon is actually over here, from this view when you're heading westbound on 36, that's the perceived optic height of it. And
okay, so it will, and
it's 90,
it seems
this
like
is 90 feet.
so it's an optical illusion. It will look like it's the same height, but it's
right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. From the opposite angle, like if you're coming down 36.
If you're going east, this is 90 feet, that's 45. And that's given a line
that looks
from here. So
not nearly as nice that way, so that's why I'm asking.
Right.
To a tenant, that looks great.
This is what, and that's part of the game with this is it is a shell game. You're trying to, as Bill said, these people want their presence, and this screen needs to work, and we don't want to distract the drivers either, obviously. So there's a lot going on with it to consider. This shows a
If I could just wait, so I could ask lots of questions, and we could have a dialogue around the importance of signage, but
yeah.
I just want to say this is so far off of anything else that we've discussed. I personally am not supportive of an LED even remotely close to this size. I get the importance of signage. We've been talking about this now for a year and a half or two. But there is no example I could think of, and I spent a lot of time driving between here and Denver and here in the airport and up and down 25, and this would be an anomaly with, maybe there's one or two exceptions on, giant malls, but I take exception to the comment that, this is beginning to be the norm. This is not the norm we're seeing in this region, and not even close. So, not even close to being supportive of it, personally.
With the height or the LED or both? The whole thing?
Yes.
Okay.
All of it. All of it. Really just disappointed, right? I mean, I think the signage on the front is great, and, thrilled that we've engaged a local expert who has the pulse of the community, and this is just, it seems like, there should be a casino in there, and it's just so far off of brand. And just disappointing.
Well, I don't take offense to anything,
Right.
and that's fine. We're honestly, we're trying to create one of the best entertainment districts in the state here, and that's not the norm. I mean, we're trying to create something here that's more exciting, better, more energy, better tenants than anything else on the 36, truly. To do that, you're going to need to be not necessarily just like everything else. Like I said, I don't take offense to anything like that. I know that a 90-foot tall pylon on the freeway is big, and an LED is big. I want to work with you to find something, because we're going to need to go to CDOT with whatever this is,
right,
and get it approved, and I'm going to need your full support helping us get this through CDOT so that we can get something in here that attracts really high quality tenants to the town and to the project. You tell me what you want. Hey, I'll tell you that the bigger the signage is and the taller it is and the brighter, the better as far as getting these Class A restaurants and theater and everything else.
Bill,
You tell me what you like.
I understand what you're trying to do here. I mean, I totally do. But this feels so far from what we have been as a city that, I mean, literally, I've had, 4 or 5 days to sort of even fathom this. And then I see this and I go, oh my God, what are we, the outlet mall? This is not the feel for what, I mean, I understand you're saying you want it to be a great entertainment district. Well, come on, it's still Superior, Colorado. Let's keep it in scale with who we are as a community. The other piece that does concern me, and I know we want downtown Superior to be incredibly successful, but we have denied other retailers the ability to market themselves on 36 the way this is. And so if we're going to talk about this, we have to think very seriously about what's the message we give to our existing partners who have kept us in business for many, many years. I mean, just the LED part of this, I know how big a problem we had just getting a little bit of lighting on a sign on Colton. And I know this isn't Colton, it's 36. But this is going to take some time to get me over the hump of saying, yeah, this is what I want on 36. And I have to beg to differ. There is nothing like this anywhere on 36. There might be down at the 2 outlet malls, but 36, there's nothing like this. And I'm not sure we want to be the ones, particularly when we have very good neighbors across the street in Louisville who are going to be looking at this too. So I want to help you market on 36, but this is way over the top. And there was nothing like this anywhere in our design guidelines. So we really need to think hard about this.
So, context question. We have the context of the parking garage there. I assume, and there's a couple different locations I see, but is the next closest building going to end up being the second pad for the hotel site? that going to be the next contextual building that people will
To
see?
the north, yeah.
And
You'd have, going northbound, you'd have the, go to the other view where you're going northbound, yeah. Yeah, you'd have the sports
Yeah.
stable parking lot, the sign, the creek, and then the second hotel pad. You can see the element in the background there, behind the tree. So the second hotel would be just to the right of the element there. It's a
Yeah,
ways-
just
it's a
over
ways in
here.
the distance.
Yeah.
And what's the maximum height that we could expect on that second hotel?
I think that pad is zoned for 90 feet, up to 90 feet.
And saying yes, so.
So, I mean, the way that it's, with development patterns, the way they are now, and the hotel market, the way it is now, realistically, I expect it to be another 6-story hotel, probably 75 feet, similar to the Element. To go 90 feet, you'd probably end up being a high-rise, which gets into all kinds of extra things that probably won't happen. So realistically, that building probably ends up being 75 or 80 feet next to the Element.
Okay.
But it can go up to 90%.
I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, and 90 feet next to a 45-foot building is a bit extreme. I also am not quite as concerned. I do think shrinking it down a bit would be appropriate, but we want this to be successful. We want to drive business in here, and we want to attract the types of businesses that, A, will make Superior a destination, but B, really give us that footing to diversify our revenue streams that we've been looking for and talking about for how many years now. So I am supportive of giving you the signs that you want and need, but as a compromise, I think coming back with a little bit shorter of a sign would be appropriate.
I'd like to agree with Ken on that. I'm not really against the LED aspect of it. I think that's kind of nice that it makes things changeable. But the height, to me, 90 feet is really tall. And particularly when you're using an LED sign that's already going to attract attention. I mean, Broomfield at the First Bank Center, they have an LED sign right there.
Right.
Looking at a picture of it right now, it can't be more than 10, 15 feet high. And yet I can probably recite the whole lineup of concerts and events that they have. Like it stands out. It doesn't have to be 90 feet tall, especially when we've got, I mean, I understand there's more construction coming there, but we've got these gorgeous mountain views. I don't want to throw a 90-foot sign up right in front of them. That's my biggest objection. I do take Sandy's point, though, that we will have neighbors have concerns over the lights. So I think if you are presenting an LED sign, we need to talk about how bright it will be, how that will affect the neighbors.
Yeah, certainly we would have the maximum amount of control over the nits, or which is the light expression from both sides of that board, to mitigate against that.
Personally, I would like to see, some 3D modeling, the renderings that we've seen with Chad when we've been looking at the Toll Brothers presentation before we, consider anything like this. A still image like this is one thing, but it's another thing to see it in context and kind of look at it, with a 360-degree view. One of the challenges that I think that we have with downtown Superior is that, from 36, you see the back of the sports stable, you see the back of the parking garage. It's really easy to drive by it and not know that it's even there. So in order for downtown Superior to be a success, I do agree that there needs to be, some signage that really announces that the development is there and kind of identifies where it is and tries to lure people in. I agree with Laura that the First Bank Center, they have an LED. Unser Racing down by I-25 has an LED. They work. Whether it's 90 feet tall, 60 feet tall, I don't know what necessarily is the magic number, but
yeah,
I do agree that I think that it's important for us to have some sign. I think one of the challenges that you're going to have with just this location in general is when you're driving on 36 eastbound to Denver, there isn't a turnoff once you see the sign, right? You're going to be going down to the Flatirons Mall at that point and then trying to backtrack your way into downtown Superior, whereas heading 36 westbound into Boulder, you'll be able to see it in time to get off at McCaslin and then jump over. One thing that you might want to consider is to see if there's some opportunity to, over by the marketplace where the BRT station and the exit onto McCaslin is, to have some sort of signage announcing downtown Superior over there as well. I don't know if that's a negotiation that you need to have with CDOT.
I love that idea. Who owns, does the town own any right of way over there? Or?
I don't know.
Well, I think CDOT's requirements are that any sign has to be on the project property. So they, Guardian Storage went through this where they tried to put a sign along the highway over by CDOT's site, and CDOT wouldn't let them because it wasn't on their property. So I don't think they would be able to do something on RTD or the marketplace, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think signage is important. I'm generally supportive. I'm open to any proposal. I don't know if this is the right proposal, but I certainly understand why you'd want it. And I do share the concerns that we don't want this blaring in people's windows and affecting residents who are living right next door to it. I think we're probably going to hear more complaints from people who live in Louisville than we are going to hear from people who live in Superior on this, because they're going to be looking at it right across the street from the Coal Creek Golf Course. But I guess if Stephen thinks that this is consistent with the spirit of the PD and the design guidelines, and or if it's silent and we've got some wiggle room here to kind of horse trade and make something happen, I'm open to the discussion, because I do think that it is important, because we can't just have a development here without really an attractive sign that lets people know that there's something here for them to see.
Bill, has there been consideration of more than one sign along the property? I mean, such that the marketplace has multiple signs along their property, and they've got a lot less frontage along the highway, but they've got multiple signs with different tenants on it, and that, I'm not sure if that's, if they feel that's effective, or if one big one would have been more effective. You've got probably 5 or 10 times as much highway frontage as they do, and it, a single sign seems like you blink and you're going to miss it. But if you've got perhaps multiple signs that have the header downtown Superior, and then have different tenants on it, and maybe some tenants get a repeat because they're bigger tenants, to me that it might be a good strategy to consider. I'm all for supportive of signage, and I could even support an LED sign. I just think a single one of this scale is probably not the right fit. The other thought, just following up on what Mark was saying about signage or eastbound signage. I know the highway has these blue signs that advertise, food, attractions, and so on. I think we ought to make sure that we're getting on those, and if there's a way to get the downtown concept on those, I don't know if if it's more of single businesses or if the sports stable could get on as an attraction or that sort of thing. But that's I think we definitely want to be dialed into that if that's our only option.
So I do, since people brought up the design guidelines, this absolutely would be a variance. It's unambiguous. There's, even from the town code, it anchors to the town code, and it also anchors just the design guidelines, where there's a prohibited signs list. And some of them are obvious, signs that emit, advertising, signs that emit sounds, things like that. I mean, where it's not going to be a used car dealer, but the last one, reader boards or large LED displays that change or scroll. So maybe this one wouldn't change or scroll, it would just be a static LED, but it's just, I mean, for those of us that, I wasn't on the board at the time that the design guidelines were agreed upon, but I was sitting on the other side. I applaud the effort to try. My instincts tell me this is going to be a non-starter. So, you want because to your point, you're going to need to go to CDOT and others. I want you to invest your time in looking to find retail tenants, how we could accelerate some of the build out, how we could bring our kids from Rock Creek into, into the sports stable, how we can get restaurants. I don't want to spend time arguing with you about an LED sign that my instincts tell me is never going to be approved because it is prohibited and it's going to require a variance. And the community, our community, and the one across the street, just, I don't think we're going to support it. And so scaling this thing down, okay, you could try, but I don't think an LED was consistent with the spirit of what the board that allowed the guidelines to be approved wanted, and it's certainly not consistent with anything that I think the community wants. Even when I'm driving through the Safeway in Rock Creek, there's a small LED board. I frankly think that's inconsistent with the brand of the town. But it's pretty small. It's, I don't know, 6 foot by 8 foot. It's a pretty small thing, but I kind of cringe. It doesn't feel like it's consistent.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
Anyway, so I'm done. But anchoring to the design guidelines, this is a variance. And
I completely agree with you. The design guidelines of PD never anticipated anything like this. They didn't even think about it, which was I wasn't here when the PD was written either. I think it was a big mistake if the goal is to make this a retail entertainment center, because obviously you need this from a retail perspective as a retail guy. The LED thing, this screen is a completely different class of the thing that's a Safeway. This is, I see it as a static image. We would have design guidelines that have very strict branding standards. It would look like the Class A, really nicely designed image that would stay for, they have different regulations, but like 10 seconds minimum each, and then it might switch to something else. We could dedicate a certain percentage of that time to advertising town events like the Chili Fest or those kind of things on top of just advertising tenants. It gives us the opportunity, on top of those 6 spaces, we're going to have hopefully like 50 tenants in downtown Superior. It gives us the opportunity to promise some freeway signage to some of those smaller tenants that don't have room for those 6 panels. And I'll tell you, again, I'm completely ears wide open on a compromise or whatever you want for your town and for this project. From a leasing standpoint, I have a major anchor tenant who would, the ancillary leasing off of this one tenant alone would fill at least half the space that we have to lease if I sign them. They won't come if this sign isn't here. I mean, that's just like they need signage on 36, and most of the larger anchor type tenants that you find are going to have the same rule. They just won't come without a freeway sign. And so, like I said, just keep that in mind. This is incredibly important to the success of bringing retailers faster. That's my main goal too. This is how we do it.
I wish I had a nickel for every time you said that.
Well,
if we don't do this, we're going to lose this tenant. I mean, it's just.
I'm not lying.
I hear you. I don't think you are. It's just, we've heard that repeatedly. We are so far, like years beyond where the community wanted this to be. And I'm just asking my colleagues on the board to join me, send Bill the direction, bring us retail, get to work. This is a huge distraction. If we tell Bill that we should spend time trying to, make the LED smaller, he'll do it, and he'll come back, and we'll have another 2-hour debate, and maybe it'll pass, maybe we won't. This is just, join me, send him back to work. We do not want an LED sign.
You understand that you can't say both things, right? You can either approve signage and help me bring tenants, or say no signage and there will be no tenants. I mean,
there are creative ways you could do this without making us look like a casino, right? And the brand of this town is inconsistent with an LED sign.
Okay.
I think we need to be practical and pragmatic here. I mean, what we should care about is the successful completion and development and the vibrant downtown that we all want, right? Like, that's what we should want. And if to get that requires signage along 36, I think we should be open to it. So I just don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face here and say, no signage along 36, and then find out that, well, then we have a really hard time of attracting any retailers. And I totally get it. I mean, if I was looking to rent commercial space in downtown Superior and there was no signage along 36, why would you do that when you could just go down the street to Westminster, which is going to have
I agree. And but just to
similar.
clarify, I want other people to speak, but to clarify, I'm not saying no signage along 36. I'm saying the LED is inconsistent with the brand of the town. So I think there absolutely should be signage along 36. I think we should be, I'm glad that we've invested in a local entity that knows how to do this, that knows how to attract retailers. I'm saying no way to the LED. Let's talk about what appropriate signage should be there. The LED was specifically prohibited. It's a bad idea.
So Kevin, I have to respectfully disagree on the LED side of things. With the guidelines saying it can't be a changing LED, to me, that's a really important part.
Right.
I don't want a sign that's going to be flashing and blinking and changing from one thing to the next. But I kind of like the LED. I mean, I think it's a great way to make sure that we're able to showcase events and actual activities rather than just having a static, this is the retailer here. That said, and I don't necessarily want to see you guys back here like every month asking for permission to put new things up, but I kind of want to know what that governance is going to look like for what's on the LED. I mean, you've chosen to show this cute little girl in our 4th of July parade. I can't imagine that's actually what's going to be on the sign most of the time. It's probably going to be retail events, or maybe not events, but 20% off at this store, whatever it is.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't. I mean, so we absolutely, and every time one of these signs gets done, you have a very strict set of guidelines over what is allowed to be done and what percentage of the time it gets. I would envision certainly, we're going to have a lot of active programming in the project, whether it's town-sponsored or Metro District-sponsored or privately sponsored for music events and farmers markets and all that kind of thing.
So is the thinking that it would be primarily events on the LED?
I think it would probably be roughly half events and kind of that kind of community update function. You would want to have some just branding, not like 20% off blowout sale, but like just a nice branded, or like a like a nice lifestyle image with the brand in the corner. But high quality, nice, upscale, not kitschy, and a lot of it comes down to the design standards that we implement and that we require. All of that would go through design review by probably the public improvement company, which will administer all of the retail activities, sort of as a retail association type of thing. So it'll all be under strict regulation, and we can get into more, even before we come back to you next time, we can get into some regulations on what that looks like and what the timing is.
I think it could be great even, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying you have to put 12% of the time it's this and 28% it's that, but even if we could get a couple sample images of, this is what an event would look like, this is what a sale would look like, whatever is contemplated.
Another thing that would be helpful would be to have kind of a census of the other kind of similar signs along the 36 corridor, that you'd use as like a comparison. So going down to Westminster, going down into Broomfield, the first Bank Center sign, the Unser Racing sign down by 25, the Westminster, development that they're doing there, down by Church Ranch. How tall are those signs as a point of comparison? Because that's really what will make this sign, I think, consistent with the feel of 36.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion. I will just, my closing comment on this will be, as a board, we've got very few opportunities to kind of affect momentum of different things, and to me, this is one of those moments where we can, as a board, say, yes, we will support the master developer to do the things that are going to get the high quality tenants that we need and get that momentum going. I mean, that's what I felt so strongly about getting Tesla in there. That was one of the many pieces of momentum that we needed to kind of build the brand, build the quality of downtown Superior. And if Bill is telling us that a an LED sign of significant scale is what is going to be necessary, I'm going to support that.
So I can't remember if I weighed in on this or not. I don't think I did. For me, I mean, it's 600 square feet is what we're talking about with this LED.
Right.
You know, for all sakes and purposes, that's a freaking Jumbotron. It is massive relative to the First Bank sign. And First Bank sign, you know, when the First Bank Center was built, it was all industrial. Some apartments have come up around that. It's changed. The Unser Racing is around a car sales lot. You know, it was the GM auto lot that got converted into Unser Racing. So they're all industrial zones. This is a residential community with a 600 square foot Jumbotron that we're talking about here. You know, and what's unique about Superior is we are relatively small. We have a couple of relatively small commercial corridors. This sign is so out of whack, which was with what is on the other side of McCaslin, that I really struggle with what we're trying to do. You know, I think Clint, you said something earlier. You know, why not a couple of shorter signs? You know, something along those lines. I don't want to say I'm completely opposed to an LED, but 600 square feet, guys, that is nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, on just to, well, I do want to get through the rest of the package just to get your quick feedback on the rest of the package. I know this is probably the most contentious issue. I do want to point out, not that it really matters, but you know, all of the other approvals have had some kind of profitability for downtown Superior as a private development project. This is just a cost. I mean, I don't make any money off of this sign. And so you know, that's where we're completely aligned on this fact. We're both just trying to bring retailers to the center. I want a sign so that the project is successful and so that we have really high quality retailer and restaurants that fill the space and that create the active lifestyle destination that we've all dreamed of for the last 4 years, for you much longer. But it's not like I make any money when we get this approved. You know, I mean, this is just another project cost. So you know, I appreciate the feedback. We will go do some work, look for examples, try to come up with some alternates that we think would be equally attractive to retail tenants. Right. And then we'll come back to you with some options for this specifically. And then I think we can get through the rest of it relatively quickly, but I do want to go through the rest of the package. We have some other wayfinding and that kind of signage that I just want you to see. And if you have any comments or sensitivities, any of that, certainly speak up.
So we need to close that. Yeah. Nope. This one. Is it? Yep. Oh, this one does? The far left over here. Ah, yeah, that's where that was our segue to that discussion. Okay, so let's clear our heads for a moment and pretend that we're in the project and we've gone past the entries. And so what the rest of the program does is connect you with a series of these boulders that are vehicular scaled and just directing to the major amenities throughout town. So these would not necessarily always be tenants listed here. They're primarily amenities to get residents and visitors through. That being said, if we were going into the project and you needed to see where the marketplace was and there were tenants asking for space, we would allow it and need to figure out the standards, the graphic standards that separate amenities from tenants. It's just at this point, we're not showing it. And then associated with that are branded banner program that would be seasonal, that help to color the light poles and create energy, and it's a very traditional program. And I think as a counterpoint to this discussion in LEDs, I think that this development, what it does is it has 1 foot in memory and 1 foot in prophecy, where the expected things such as this do occur, and they are well executed. But I think having a program that uses a sculptural feature like this as part of signage is what is unexpected and much more future-based in its stance. It's not just a traditional tombstone with the directional information. And then we've added in the program, this is a pedestrian scaled sign. So where we're doing is going to the charcoal and teal brand color scheme and shifting away from the core 10 to differentiate that from the vehicular program. And they have a little color inlay of the teal underneath that you see in here. And then part of that program is an interactive display that you'll see in the gathering areas of the main street, where again this would be an interactive display, possibly a touch screen, with community information and tenant information as the project evolves, and an orientation map. Any questions on that? So it's a very simple program.
I have one question on the light pole, those signs?
Yeah.
Yes. Just want to check, have those, and maybe I'm off on this, have they been done in an area that's quite as windy as Superior? We had, I was thinking about this
yeah.
because today we had little mini tornadoes all over the neighborhood as trash cans were thrown throughout the street, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to execute those with relief, wind relief, perforation. So the specification for the banners would require that.
Okay.
The master developer wouldn't allow something to be produced and
Okay.
rip. Yeah.
Well, just want to put that out there because I think,
Yeah,
Superior is one of the windiest places I've
Yeah.
ever lived by far, so.
Yeah.
Wanted you to be aware.
Yes, certainly. Any other questions? What am I doing here? All right, so the section 4 of the plan focuses on tenant signage guidelines. So we're using a battery approach of separating all the various tenant expression to fascia, which is this section here. And what we want to do is promote variation in scale and position so that we are avoiding a monotonous, traditional application of signage on the fascias of the buildings. And so, and then also a variation of lighting type and methodology of depths and signage fabrication, and all that is in detail in here. And so the developer would be accepting each tenant's proposal with their fit out and reviewing it and pushing them, I think, in most cases, to go beyond what they would typically do for their fit out. And this part of it is something that you're seeing more prominent now, is essential branded mural program as part of their tenant expression, so that they're possibly considering other areas of the building face to promote their brand than they would typically do. And it's something that is on high trend now, but I think it's timeless and it's not going to go away. So we want to allow for that. And it's part of a grander scheme to bring the decorative arts of the town message into the overall view for the, what's the name of this development at Block? No, Oregon Ranch. So as an example, they would, they would be in charge of promoting this and pushing it through. So Oregon Ranch. And then plaques. All this is about variation in position. And then different, like the hotel tenants and larger format office stuff. That we're just explaining what they're allowed to do in these images and the text here. I know I'm kind of rushing. Are there any questions thus far?
Just a comment on the murals. I think it's a great idea. I went back through the design documents, and they're a little bit vague in murals, like as signs. You know, murals are great, you know, as they contribute to public art.
Right.
And I think specifically in the guidelines, it says let's avoid large sheets of concrete. You know?
Right,
So
exactly.
You know, I don't know if we have to clarify that, you know, mural could be a sign, you know, in terms of refinement of the PD here.
I wouldn't say we need to go back and amend the PD or anything. I think that, you know, this signage program really just gets into a lot more detail than either the town existing sign guidelines or the PD and the design guidelines for the PD. This is really the document we're going to use with our tenants to help guide them and to help, like, hey, you didn't think of a wall sign, did you? This is really cool. It helps us in lease negotiations when we're talking to actual tenants to plan their signage and to keep them from doing anything that we don't think looks good, like the big standard like box signs or like the kind of lower scale things. Part of this is maintaining integrity of our brand and of the project and of the value of everything, and making sure that we're kind of forcing tenants to do a little bit more expensive signage than they might want to do. And that's very typical of every mixed-use project I've done. And the other part is kind of creating inspiration for some tenants that might not have a big, you know, national marketing team, and they might not have thought of this otherwise.
So, since I gave you such a hard time about the LED, let me just comment on the back half. I think the back half of this is fantastic. I agree with the, anything you could do to leverage sort of the art spin that we're going to spend some time tonight talking about that, kind of trying to brand our community as being a little bit more artistic and blend that with signage. I think it's great. It's, you know, when you look at some of these buildings, they look like older buildings that, you know, like Soul Cycle, for example, was, you know, a building that was probably converted from something that was 30, 40 years old.
Right.
There's recent examples right around the corner in Broomfield, the Partners Group, that huge, very expensive building. I forget what they've written on that side of that wall. You guys know what it is. Can you think of, driven by it a handful of times?
I can't think of that example.
Like on the outside. I know they have a big super graphic on the inside too.
Yeah. It's great. It looks great. It's sort of painted in, you know, it's a fantastic brick, and then it's painted in this almost faded type color. It goes with the brand that you're trying to set. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure that it would not be consistent with the Broomfield design guidelines because the thing's probably 100 feet high.
Right.
But it just blends perfectly. So this is the type of thing that I think would just blend perfectly. And that would never be, it's not prohibited by the guidelines. It just wasn't. This adds a level of specificity and inspiration to those that, to your excellent point, that maybe don't have a large national marketing engine to help think something like that. So, great.
Thanks.
Should we move on? Yeah, so, I mean, everything in scale change. These are a classic, the blade sign, promoting them even when a tenant, often they skip them, they think they aren't required, or they don't want to spend the extra money. We want tenants to consider doing it. It is another way to be artful, even though it's done everywhere and we've seen it for millennia. We want to promote it and add their category of sign, or extend their category of signage to be beyond just a fascia sign and a window graphic. But I think what we've done in this program is made sure that everything, they have a wide breadth to choose from to put their brand together in the overall scope. Awnings, which are again tried and true. This actually is in Broomfield here still. It's still there. And then window graphics are a part of it, and much in the same as the wall graphics, create interesting messaging, and we want to challenge eventual businesses to look at all these and consider what we're asking for. We have to have something about our ground monument signage that they would bring, whether it's a hotel or office space. And then ground plane signage, which is important, plaques that are embedded at prior to their threshold, possibly, or fit in with the master plan of the hardscape of the Main Street that Bill worked on with the paving program. And then possibly they would be allowed to do, they would be allowed to do sidewalk signage in the plaza well, we added a section on banner signs here for the plaza. That was what that was for, yeah. And these are the ones we don't want to see, which are always fun to look at.
I'll bring the gorilla if you like it.
Inflate, well,
How about
yeah.
that instead of the freeway sign?
Yeah. So that's generally it. There's a lot to read in there. I didn't want to go through all of it. Any questions at the overall package?
And I think for me, I'm not sure how much this got into it or how much you guys have talked to staff about it. One question is always, what level of review does the town want to have for each individual sign
For
application
submittals,
versus
yeah.
how much can the developer approve unilaterally? Obviously, tenants like a faster process with less uncertainty as far as town discretion.
These packages can get quite detailed and create, we can create tables that give specific limitations to size, and that can be added if needed to promote the expediency of approval with planning for permits and so on.
So I guess the question is, and we don't have to answer it tonight, and maybe it's a question for staff, but can we get to a point with specificity in this document that staff and the board feels comfortable saying, as long as it's consistent with this plan, that, we'll give discretion over the little details to the administrator of the project? Or do you want Stephen to review every single tenant submittal that comes in? It's really, again, don't have to answer tonight, but it's something, it's a discussion for next time.
I'd like to just see some really rigorous guidelines, and then I would trust the process, but I think we need to see that.
Yeah, my sense is we've already established the guidelines. I think you should submit proposals consistent with the existing guidelines to Stephen and town staff to approve. If it's not consistent with the guideline and there's a variance that's requested, then it should come before the board. To me, it's, I don't want to hear 5-6 years later, like, we have the guidelines. If you needed the guidelines changed, we've had, 4 amendments over the years. We should have done it. We should have changed it. We have the guidelines. I really appreciate this proposal to share and get our input around color schemes, and I like it all, but there's a clear variance that's being asked for, and if we're going to have that variance, it requires board approval.
Well, it's a good point. So, maybe we need to scrub. So the whole point of this is to create a single final document that's got super clear detail when it comes to signage fabrication, that we can give all of our tenants and say, here's what you have to do, and I don't have to think about it or deal with them anymore. None of that detail is anywhere close to near in the design guidelines of the PD, and it really shouldn't be. So this is a different document. I guess what we could do is look at the design guidelines, see if there's anything that contradicts what's in here. Because what I don't want to do is start giving this to tenants and then have a sign come in that's a square footage is allowed by this and not allowed by somewhere in the design guidelines or something like that. So maybe that's our job to go scrub that a little bit and see what if there's any issues.
Well, I agree with what Kevin was saying before. The back half of this presentation, everything looks good, and from just a cursory look at what the design guidelines say about signage within the commercial core, I mean, it seems to me that all of this is consistent with the folding signs and the medallion signs and all that. I mean, I think it looks great. So with the exception of, the 90-foot tall, highway sign, it seems like this is consistent with, the spirit of the design guidelines, at least from my perspective. I don't know if the rest of the board feels the same, but I would feel comfortable with, subject to town staff's blessing, if they feel that this is consistent, notwithstanding the 36 sign, to giving this to tenants, that this is the sort of thing that we would want to see that's consistent with the design guidelines, because I think it looks great.
Yep, I'll also support the idea of getting to a point where you've got a document that you can hand over to people and not have to go through a lot of back and forth on signage designs. And I like what I've seen in this.
So I was just going to say, I have a specific question. Has town staff gone through this carefully and compared it to the design guidelines? Other than accepting the 36 thing, Matt, have they gone through it? And is this generally consistent, or has Stephen seen anything that appears to be a variancy, or has he looked at it?
Yeah, Stephen's gone through it, and the 36 sign was just not contemplated as part of the PD, so that's the one thing.
But the rest of it appears to be consistent with the language that is in the design guidelines. I'm looking at you back there in the back of the room.
And typically with signs, we have a sign permit process we're pretty quick on our turnaround, so I don't see that as being a huge obstacle.
The only other one that jumps out at me that's not contemplated is the major tenant identification sign, wall sign. So we have a very restricted office allowance. It's 25 square feet, and we bumped that up to 35 square feet to allow for the medical office building. And they're proposing 100 square feet for major tenants, so that would have to be addressed as well. But that's the only one that also stands out as being different than what the PD or the design guidelines allow.
Right.
Thank you, Stephen.
I'll add my final comment that I agree, let's make this as administrative as possible to break down as many barriers as we can to getting these approved in a timely manner. If there's anything we continue to hear over and over and over from the community is, A, we want our commercial and we want it as quickly as possible. So whatever sign plan you guys can come back to us with that allows us to get these approvals done as quickly as possible, and whatever sign plan you need that will get us the tenants we need is something I will support.
Okay, anything further on this? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the information and your time.
Yeah.
All right, we are on to advisory committee reports. We don't have any, and we're on to the consent agenda. We have items A, C, and E up for vote on the consent agenda. We've pulled items B, D, and F, which we're going to talk about individually. So to have a motion to approve consent A, C, and E. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, second by Trustee Shaw. All those in favor? All right, those items pass unanimously. And Laura, you pulled item B, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with ABC X2 for airport consulting.
Yes. Yes, I had a number of questions on this one. Matt, were we able to have them call in for this? I know I'd asked for that previously.
No, they were not able to. If you want them here, we'll have to table this and bring it back.
Yeah, I mean, I would just looking at the actual agreement that we have. One of the concerns I had was just around the actual deliverables that they're going to be providing us with, not from a semantics point of view, but just looking at this. I mean, they're basically going to attend things, and they're certainly going to advocate for us. And we've heard from the community that they've done a great job advocating for us in the past. So I appreciate hearing that in public comment earlier. But I mean, one of the things that I was really disappointed by is one of their deliverables was literally just to add detail to what they did before, where I'm like, okay, so you didn't deliver what we asked for before, and now you're going to ask for more money to finish that up. Like that doesn't sit right with me. That was something that I brought up in the last phase of the agreement is, why isn't there more detail behind this? Why haven't you done a timeline, et cetera? So I was really struggling with that item. How do others feel?
The whole task 2 part of this is more or less just building awareness and working with the tenants at the airport. Again, this doesn't necessarily feel like our role. This feels like a role of the airport to me. And the fact that the airport isn't a party to this agreement, and that as a requirement of doing this, the airport has to participate. This seems to be putting the cart before the horse a little bit, in my mind. I'm more, I guess, concerned about the approach from a holistic standpoint. my understanding when we left this back in November was that we had direction, that they've already identified what could be done, and that the FAA came back to us and said, all right, move into the roundtable phase. So we're not discussing the roundtable phase at all in this. This contract doesn't lead us into how they're going to help us in the roundtable. I'm missing that part. So maybe Matt or whoever could speak to that a little bit as to, are they going to have a role in the roundtable? Are they not envisioned to have that role? Is there going to be an addendum to add that work? Help me understand.
Well, the roundtable is going to be spearheaded by the counties, Boulder County, Jefferson County, and then the surrounding communities. I think Louisville selected 2 council members to participate in that roundtable. I would expect that if we decide to move forward with this, or even if we don't decide to move forward with this agreement, we'd still want to participate in the roundtable and identify at least 1 board member, maybe 2, to participate in that. Their role in the roundtable will be more limited than what their role in the noise task force or technical group is going to be, because they bring the technical aspect of this, their expertise, working with the FAA and the airport and on their employees with regard to noise, whereas the roundtable will be more of a community type working group with whatever support we need from them in assistance as we move forward with that roundtable, because we may need data or information from them that will help us as part of that roundtable.
So does Centennial, for example, that has the roundtable, will they have a technical group as well?
I don't know if they have a technical group.
Right.
Yeah.
The answer is no. Right. I mean, I'm going to approve the contract because I think we need to keep some, we talked about momentum before. We need to keep some momentum. These guys have done a good work. It's not it's a lot of money, but it's less money than it was last year. Yeah. I don't like the technical, what used to be the noise abatement task force, now called something else. There are members of that task force. I don't know if there'll be members this year, but there are members of that task force last year who had some extremist views. We will not put somebody on a task. I do not think we would put somebody on a task force or a roundtable that had an extremist view of shut down the airport, because that's not going to happen. Similarly, I don't expect somebody that's on a task force to have the opposite extremist view saying, well, the airport was here before you moved in, so get over it, it's your problem. That to me feels like a very extremist view. And I heard that extremist view from a member of the task force previously. I don't even, I'm confused by this scope of work. I'm glad that we're going to continue to engage them, but this is just really poorly designed. I mean, I'd almost rather have a 3-bulleted thing saying we're going to continue to engage with the town and look for ideas to advocate on your behalf. I'd be all about that. But there's details in here that are just, I don't think they're going to deliver on. There's, Laura and I were aligned, I think, last time, and I suspect others were, that our deliverable, our request was, strategies. Yep. And I'm not sure we ever really got strategies to mitigate the noise. We got some, ideas and some next steps, but I would love to be in this phase now where I'm trying to implement on a strategy. And we gave them ideas for what that might be, and I'm certainly no expert, but, maybe it's, get to know the flight school,
working with
quarterly meeting where we get to meet the trainers, or did they know, or, invite the trainers to, I don't know what the strategies are. So I'm going to prove it, but I'm not all that comforted by this SOW. But I do want to continue to engage ABC because I like them and I do think they advocated on our behalf, and it's what we need because they're experts and we're not.
Kevin, I kind of viewed some of what you said the same way, and then Leslie sent out the memo that the Louisville City Council put together for this thing, and I found the 6 bullets near the end to be exactly what I was looking for in terms of specificity, in terms of what they're going to go do. Absent that, I'd be in the same position. There's a bunch of unknown in terms of what they're going to go do. And I can completely agree with what ABC has done so far. They've advocated for us. I still don't think we should be the ones paying for it, and that troubles me, continues to trouble me. We derive some ancillary benefit from the airport. You know, I know the airport will talk about its relative contribution to the economy, and there's definitely people who live in our community whose corporations are here because of the airport. So, you know, we have to be good stewards, but at the same time, the airport derives a greater amount of that economic pie than we do. So I'm looking forward to this being the last time that we have to re-up this contract. However, I'm committed to seeing it through simply because they have done more in the last 12 months than we've been able to do on our own, bar none. You know, and I still think we need to elevate this within the town staff. No offense to, you know, Kevin and Leslie, I really do think we need to be on par with how Louisville is appropriating this, you know, relative to their town staff at the senior deputy town manager level. Just because that's the relative priority that Louisville is assigned to it, I think it, you know, it should reflect on us as well. But I'm committed to seeing it through. I think that Louisville City Council memo really clarified for me what ABC is going to do. So I think, you know, and let's be honest here, it was a contract, you know, and I think I'm sure in a lot of your roles, you know, if it's a lawyer, you don't get, you know, a contract with specific deliverables. You get an hourly rate, and they're going to get as far as they can before they run out of budget. I think ABC did that as well. You know, they had what they thought they could get done over a certain period of time, and it's hard because they don't control the airport, they don't control the county, they don't control the FAA. They're advocating for us, and we don't even have, you know, a square foot of land around the airport. But what they did was significant relative to, you know, where they started, and they told us on day one, this is the only agreement, this is the only engagement where they would actually not been employed by the airport. So this was new for them, and I think they probably, you know, scoped out a little bit more than they thought they could do. Still, I'm extraordinarily happy with where we got with what we invested, so I'm definitely in support of it.
I guess to that point, I mean, my concern around them not getting everything done is that I remember the very first time they came before us, and I said, you are not going to get all this done. Tell me what you will get done so that I will approve this. They said, no, we promise we will get all this done. They didn't. And every single meeting that they came back, I said, you're missing this, you're missing that. They threw their hands up and never addressed that. We had a member of the public comment earlier that Louisville is the one who's going to be leading this engagement. I have a real problem with that. I mean, not because I don't trust Louisville by any means, but because they weren't even listening to us before when we were the only party to it. Now, all of a sudden, we're in with Louisville, and we think that they're suddenly going to magically get done what we want them to get done. I mean, it's funny. I think everyone here is supporting this, and I came in with very mixed feelings, but the more we're talking about this, the more I don't want to sign this agreement. It's an agreement of things they're not going to do.
Why is Louisville running this, and who decided that?
Yeah, I see that everywhere. It was just a discussion between us and Louisville. Yeah. I mean, we do this on other projects. We've done it on US 36. We manage the first phase, they manage the second phase. I mean, there's nothing more to it than that. They do have more staff than us, they have more time on top of that, which does help from a staffing perspective, but
my impression is that Superior residents are more troubled by this.
I don't think because Louisville's leading this contract in any way diminishes the importance of this to our community.
My concern is specifically that these consultants were not taking my concerns seriously when Louisville wasn't leading it. So now there's especially no reason if I say, hey, you haven't delivered what's in the contract, they're going to again say, oh, well, we don't care, and then they're going to come ask us for more money to do it. I mean, that's what they did this time. I don't agree with the fact that their contract right now says, hey, we want to finish the work that you already paid for. I mean, if you had a contractor come to your house and say, I'm going to build something, and they only built half of it, and then they came back and said, oh, I want more money to build the other half, we'd all say no. I mean, and I don't understand why, you know, if they truly won our trust, then why aren't they at the very least calling in for this?
I want to talk about the Louisville. First, we went to a number of different communities and asked for their support to split the bill for ABC, and Louisville said yes, right? So I'm very grateful for Louisville's participation in this. But one of the things we got, you know, we talked about kind of a next stage around, let's start looking at data. And I think this is a pretty data-driven group. I don't see anything about data here. But when I start drawing through the data, which will not be part of their deliverable, But when I start drawing through the data, the experience for residents in Louisville is very different than the experience for residents in Superior. The experience for the residents in Superior primarily are the flight schools and the prop planes. The experience for the residents in Louisville are the jets. Not exclusively, but there was clearly a difference in the data as a result of that survey. So I just, you know, I'm also okay with Louisville managing this contract, but it's, you know, we as a board and we as a community need to continue to stay engaged here, because this is, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but this is it's a big issue for the residents in the town. It is the number one issue. It is the number one complaint issue that I've seen, you know, using my anecdotal when people stop me in Safeway, or the gym locker room, which is the new place people love to stop me at, which please stop doing that. This is what we hear about, and so we need to stay actively engaged. Engaging ABC gets us 10% of the way, 5% of the way to solving the problem. We still have 90-95% of the way to solve the problem. This is just a small little bit, and I don't want to overthink this little contract, because we got a lot of work to do. And that work is going to be in the roundtable. The fact that Louisville has 2 people at a roundtable, to me, already sends the absolute wrong message. Because there's a lot of communities that I want participating, and if we have 20 people sitting at this roundtable, nothing, we've all been on enough committees to know nothing gets done when you have 20 or 30 people sitting there. No disrespect to Louisville, but why do they have 2 people at the round table? And who decided they'd have 2 people at the round table, by the way?
Do I have that right, Leslie? Yeah.
The other thing that I still don't feel like we have a grasp on is, I agree with what you're saying, Kevin, in terms of the problems for Louisville are different from the problems in Superior. I don't feel like we have a grasp totally on, you know, what the problem is in Superior to a sufficient degree, right? We know most of the complaints are coming from the increase in flight school traffic, touch and goes, but we don't have a proper grasp on, you know, the number of flight schools, you know, how many planes that they have, you know, what their flights are, you know, is it certain planes that are, you know, causing the problems? And we've, you know, talked about these issues previously. And that's the sort of data that I would really like to see. Like, you know, if there's 3 flight schools that really aren't a problem, but there's 1 flight school that's a problem, this isn't a question about targeting them, but it's a question of, let's have a conversation and say, like, okay, did you know that there's a lot of noise that's being you know, created from your flight school operations, and it's concerning to our residents? Is there something that we can do that could actually address those problems? You know, because maybe they are totally unaware, right? Maybe they're just operating their businesses and not necessarily recognizing that it's having a detrimental impact on our residents. So that's the information that I think that we could actually use to actually make some changes in a positive direction that I would like to see the consultants bring to us. But generally speaking, I think it's good that we're re-upping this, because we don't have the in-house ability to do this, and I think it's good to have somebody in our corner, you know, lobbying on our behalf.
Yeah, I think everybody's made great points, and I think the reason that Louisville has taken the lead on this is because they've put their assistant city manager on this, and we haven't. I mean, let's be serious.
And just to be clear, I'm not going to assign this to Martin. If somebody in the manager's office, it's going to have to be me.
You know, and so for me, the fact that this is on a junior staff person in our Parks and Rec department, this is not a comment at all about the person. This is about how important do we see this as a town, and obviously it is a high-level priority for the city of Louisville. So the fact that the city of Louisville has stepped up and their assistant town manager has taken this on, to me, that elevates it and says, this is important. We're not there yet. And even everybody on this board isn't necessarily in agreement with that. So I really believe we need to move this up as a higher level of staff responsibility I do believe we should renew this commitment financially, but at the end of this year, if we don't see some changes, I wouldn't invest the money again, because I'm just not sure that we're getting the progress that we want to have as it relates to the noise in the community.
Okay, any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Real quick, my takeaway here is that honestly, our reliance on the consultants has dwindled, and I don't know that we are necessarily at the point that we once were, where we need to rely on them to make change happen. We've heard that. We've heard what can change. We've heard their recommendations. It's now on us to get into the roundtable and convince our peers that change needs to occur. We need them to still be in the room, which is why I think most of the deliverables on here, them being in rooms rather than giving us deliverables. That way we still have a technical voice, but it's on us going forward, and I'll approve this to make sure we still have that voice, but I'm less concerned with what their workload is and what their bill of work is going to be, and more concerned with whoever represents us in the roundtable and that we get in and represent our community appropriately.
Okay, thanks, Ken. With that, would someone like to make a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion. I will make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-17, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a service agreement with ABC x2 LLC for aviation consultant services, Phase 2.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Trustee Hammerly. We need a roll call vote, please.
Lish? Oops, sorry.
Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Skwazinski?
No.
John?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right, the next item on our agenda is 3D, adoption of a resolution approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office for law enforcement services. Ken, you pulled this item?
Yes. Sergeant Wolf, appreciate if I could just ask you a question real quick. Because this came up and we knew you'd be here tonight, I did receive a question from the community. And back in 2018, there was a armed robbery at the Walgreens of Colton. And there was kind of questions and concerns from the community about what the processes and procedures are for providing timely, factual, and relevant information to both residents and the town government in situations like this. That way people know what they should be doing from a safety perspective.
Well, I can't necessarily speak for that one. I'm not familiar with the case exactly, but, you know, in a time of an emergency situation, and we assess that there's a active threat to the community, that probably the most efficient way to do that would be to use what we call an Everbridge notification system. It's basically a reverse 911 system. And what that would do is communications would set, well, we would designate a parameter of you know, certain circumference of the community that would be encumbering as far as the operation. Excuse me. And then they would set out a message notifying each resident of the emergency that's taking place, and then the course of action they would be asked to take, whether it be shelter in place or whatever that might be. And then the other part of that would be notifying me if I'm not on duty, so I'm a part of that information gathering, notify the town staff or town manager, Matt, who would then notify the town staff as he would deem necessary. And then, you know, after that, then there's a matter of the investigation. And then usually what happens after that is a media release would be sent out by the sheriff's office and in conjunction after consultation with Matt, and what he might feel necessary to be done. But that's kind of in a nutshell we do it is you know, it's deeming that there's truly an actual threat that before we actually just launch. That's not automatic.
Okay. The Neverbridge technology that you mentioned, is that Does that go out to landlines only? Is that something people need to sign up for?
No, so well, originally that's what it was signed up, was a landline thing, but obviously technology's changed over time. A lot of people don't even have that anymore. So yes, there is a sign-up process for that. And that's part of one of the things I was going to ask for the community newsletter. I was going to do a little update with that based on some of the questions you had, see if we could encourage people to do that sign up with cell phones.
And is that the website neverbridge.com, or is that something we go to your website to do?
I haven't looked it up recently, but the last time I looked it up was something www.boco911alert.com, but I'd have to verify all that.
Okay.
See if that's still active.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Sergeant Wolf, the incident that Trustee Lish was referencing was in a neighboring jurisdiction. So maybe talk to how incidents in a neighboring community might be reported to our community, and how that decision matrix is done to determine, okay, is something occurring outside of our jurisdiction? Is it potentially elevated to the level of alerting us of that?
Good question. Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, Broomfield is an adjoining neighboring agency, which is what Commissioner Lish was referring to. And unfortunately, we work on totally separate radio channels at times, so we can't talk or communicate at that time unless we switch to a state common frequency. So that can be accomplished. It just takes a little work to get there. But generally speaking, they can call our their communication center can call ours and give us an update. Hey, this is what's going on. So we can get to the area and kind of meet up with one of their deputies first, or one of their officers firsthand, to get an exchange of information. So we can work through that. And yes, if there is an emergency from their side that impacts the Superior side, or conversely, we can get that ball rolling too. But in that particular case, it was a Broomfield incident that we were just assisting on. It sounded like.
Okay.
Hey, you said the deputy was out there fairly quickly, right?
Yeah.
On that call?
From what I understood, he was there within a couple of minutes.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you for being here this evening.
Thanks.
I'll move to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-19, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office for law enforcement services.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish.
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, and roll call vote, please.
Paulson?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Lish?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Skwazinski?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. All right, our final item on the consent agenda is item F, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Earth Green Fence for fence painting, staining, and maintenance service. And Mark.
So I pulled this real quick. So generally speaking, I'm supportive of the part of this agreement for repair and maintenance of the fences that get damaged by the wind. However, I'm not supportive of repainting our fences. Recent turnover on the HOA board, as well as the survey results that the HOA put out, showed a very high level of unanimity with the hatred of the color of the fence in Rock Creek, that if we just continue to repaint it, we're just going to continue to perpetuate this bad decision made about a past color. So my recommendation is, before we approve this, that we reach out to the HOA to see if they actually have any appetite to. I know that there is, things in our covenants and bylaws within the Rock Creek HOA that makes it difficult to change the fence color. But if we keep painting it that diarrhea yellow color, it's always going to be that way. And I'm putting my foot down once and for all, and we need to lead. So I'm saying, let's not approve this right now. Let's reach out to the HOA, see if that there's any appetite to try to actually get this fence color changed once and for all. And then we can start painting it a different color. Or alternatively, we approve this contract as is, but change the color unilaterally ourselves despite what the HOA wants, and then make it their problem. So either way, we just don't go along with the status quo.
Mark, I appreciate it. I mean, so the official name is match number 02-0521. So we're not referring this, right? So, I mean, I think, why don't we just ask, I mean, we've already selected the contractor. It's there, you know, we had a competitive bid. It would be an administrative change. Why don't we just direct staff to meet with the HOA board to see if we can align around a different color? And if they do, then we'll do an administrative change to the SOW. But I wouldn't want to necessarily hold the contract up. It feels like we could approve it, direct staff to collaborate, see if we could get this done this year, because it's been a passion of yours for a couple years now. So if we can, I'm all about it. I don't like it either, but I don't want to hold up a good contract done consistent with our town guidelines because of literally the paint color.
How many, this question for staff, how many years would we be looking at to kind of totally repaint? Let's say we started with this phase and new color of whatever is chosen. How many years are we going to be looking at multicolored fences?
3 to 4 years. We're on a rotation basis. It's approximately a 4-year cycle, but majority of it would be done in the next 3 years. Staff did hear at a recent HOA board meeting that their love of the color as well. So, yeah, it was an idea we were floating around. Years ago, staff had met with members of the HOA, and they had changed that color formulation. And so I think meeting with their architectural committee, we could go back to a more neutral color, maybe even the previous color, and then that would be a simple change after the fact.
And then what would be the expectation of many homeowners that have got the same solid color fences at various places in their yards to, I guess, to come into compliance with said new color? I mean, maybe that's more of an HOA question.
We'd have to work with the HOA.
Yeah.
And I think it was originally something with the HOA at the time was it was a way for them to see who was upkeeping on their fence to change it just a little bit. Maybe it went a little too far, but yes, we're definitely open to going with a more neutral color, working with the HOA architectural committee with that. So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one option might be in terms of the contract itself. We could kind of modify the language to say, take that language out with the color and then just say, you know, a neutral color subject to, you know, discussions with the HOA or something along those lines. I mean, that could be potentially a way that we could, you know, you could approve it, but we could just modify some of the language within the scope of services, even if that's something you're comfortable with.
I mean, my concern is I don't want the town spending money on painting something until it just seems like if we continue to put a Band-Aid on this, we're never gonna fix this problem. It may not be a problem to some, but to others, it's. I mean, when the architectural review survey came out, this was, I think, the #2 issue in terms of what people were complaining about. So at some point, there's going to take it's going to take some action, whether it's on the part of the town or on the part of the HOA. Somebody's got to blink first. Somebody's got to go first here. And I just don't want us to continue to go down this road of continuing to repaint this fence if there's actually appetite on the HOA to maybe change the color. So I just think that we should have that discussion first. If the HOA says, you know what, we're not going to really go to the homeowners and ask them if we could change the color, and this is just the way it's going to be, then case closed, and we'll just move forward and continue to maintain the fences. I just don't want us to waste money unnecessarily.
I agree with Mark on this one. I'm afraid that if we just take the color out, then it'll be, a month or two from now. HOA will say, well, we haven't decided yet, and we'll waste the money painting it the same color again. I'd rather not approve it than approve it without a color.
So there's also practical concerns here. So there was mention of this issue when we met with the HOA board several months ago, but I also agree with the color and have had additional sidebar conversations with members of the board. And it's not a straightforward, easy process. This is something that needs to get approved by by the members of the HOA, and it has to be of a certain threshold that is above 50%. The architecture survey they just put out, which was by far the most response they've ever received anything, whether it's voting for board members, other questionnaires, whatever, they got less than 50%. So they're in their highest response ever, they still haven't hit that. So if they get that close and they still don't get it, and I don't know the intricacies of it, but it was relayed to me that they could then potentially go to a judge and say, look, we're so close, but we have high disengagement, but we have a clear desire to change the fence. From a judge perspective, can we get an order to move forward with this? I mean, that's the type of hurdles we're looking at. So this isn't a 1 month, 2 month process. It's probably a multi-year process to actually do. My question then is, if we don't actually paint it this year, how bad are these fences that we're not painting right now? Are they in bad shape? And B, are we absolutely required to follow the paint guidelines of the HOA, or can we unilaterally just paint ours differently? I mean, it's weird to think that the HOA could govern the town's actions.
I'd like to see them try.
Well,
I mean, I guess my point is that I agree with what you're saying, Ken, and I think that those are valid points. Just because something is, difficult doesn't mean that it can't be done and shouldn't be done. And, if there's maybe one thing that we can get the community united behind, it's to get rid of our vomit, diarrhea-colored fencing that is detracting from the aesthetics of an otherwise really aesthetically beautiful community. I mean, that's like the one thing about this community. I think that everybody's just like, man, that's a terrible color. I've not met one person who thinks that it's good.
Well, whoever chose it in the first place loved it, Mark. So
well,
somebody loved it.
I'm not sure about that. But it was a mistake to put it into the bylaws. It was a mistake to put it into the guidelines that you need a certain threshold. But the time has come to make a change, take a stand, and I just don't want us to continue to just waste money on something that.
I agree that we should explore changing the color, but I think we also need to approve repainting the fences. I mean, if this process is going to take a year, so be it. But in the meantime, I think it's less desirable to have peeling paint, unattractive fences. It just starts to look like we're not keeping up with things. So I'd rather see this fresh colored, not so great paint color, and then it just gets into the rotation. That will be the last section that gets done whenever we do finally figure out a color. But let's not make this more complicated than we have to be. I mean, I think we've given direction to staff to look into it, see if we can change the color, but let's just approve this contract however we need to and just keep things moving forward instead of trying to do things that really should be, I think, administrative. Okay.
I agree.
Okay, then make a motion.
I gotta pull it up.
I'll do it. Town of Superior, make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-21 Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Earth Green Fence Products Incorporated for fence painting, staining, and repair services.
Motion by Trustee Hammerly, second by Trustee Lish, and roll call vote.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Skwadziński?
No.
Shaw?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Lish?
Yes.
Laces?
No.
Okay, motion passes. All right. We are on to item number 4, Advisory Committee Work Plan, and welcome OSAC to the stage, to the podium.
Hello, I'm Joel White, OSAC committee member. First time I've done this, so you have to lead me through the process here. Do you want us to kind of walk through our notable differences between last year's plan and this year's, or just answer questions?
What is the board's desire to?
I think last week when we did it, or a couple weeks ago, just 3 to 5 minutes, maybe highlights for what you hope to accomplish. questions you may have, and then save a couple minutes for questions.
Okay. Really, kind of what we discussed together is our notable differences from our 2019 plan. First and foremost, it's to provide input to the Prost Master Plan that's long overdue to be updated. We're looking at how we can do better marketing of OSAC events, National Day of Service. We've had good turnout for National Trails Day, but kind of mixed turnout with some of our cleanup events. So we're looking at better ways that we can get the word out on these types of events for better turnout. One of the things that's come up recently is how we can provide input on the ConocoPhillips property that's on the Louisville side, and how we border that, and connectivity and the flow from Superior into that property as it develops. And then promote the new Orman Roach trailhead, and then talk about what the future of that trailhead looks like, whether it continues to be as is or gets built up with amenities as part of the Prost Master Plan. Some of the standard things that we plan to do, evaluate and rank the now dwindling remaining open space in our area, provide input on development proposals to the board as requested, evaluate and rank trails as a joint venture with ProStack, and then continue to have presence at community events.
Okay. Joel, thanks for that intro. Appreciate you coming in tonight to present on behalf of the committee as well. So questions from the board?
Joel, just a quick comment, because we had the ProStack meeting last week, and they'd asked about the Orman Roast Trailhead in terms of amenities. And I know this was an option, or something that OSAC brought to the board last year as part of the budget cycle. I think ProStack and OSAC, now you have a sort of weekly or monthly work together session. I think this is a great opportunity to work together. It's not on the work plan, but I think ProStack and OSAC could definitely come in together and support, putting in better amenities at the Orman Roast Trailhead. And I think that would, go over really well.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement about that.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I just have one kind of structural question. I think this looks great, Joel, and thanks for coming out tonight and representing OSAC. In the event that the town is, able to make open space acquisitions and, deplete its open space funds, how do you feel that changes OSAC's mission at all?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a continually evolving thing. I mean, we're seeing it happen with Boulder County, with Boulder City. I mean, as the properties shrink, they're starting to move towards, what do we do with the open space we have? And I think that'll be our balance as well. I mean, I think right now we clearly have eyes on, one of the remaining properties as an acquisition target. If that doesn't happen, then I think, we start looking about, we have this, money we've built up, how do we best use it to, make the best of what we have currently or what we can have.
I guess my question is, let's say we're able to actually make acquisitions and we deplete the resources.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change OSAC's mission in your mind, if at all?
I don't know that it changes it. I mean, I think it's the same thing. I think, our mission at all times is how do we make the most out of the open space we have, or continue to get more open space around the town. I mean, I think that's a driving force of our committee, is try to hold on to what we have and get more when we can. I think working with surrounding communities becomes a bigger and bigger thing, especially with a big focus on regional connectivity with Boulder County and Broomfield County and Jefferson County, and Governor Hickenlooper's plan a couple of years ago to do statewide connections, and we have a lot of points of connection with other municipalities that I think plays into the open space of Superior.
So I actually really, so first, thank you also for coming. And I really liked your answer. I thought the primary objective of identifying in stack ranking the high priority, but the second of taking advantage of the open space that we have available and making sure that, for example, amenities are available. I really want to hear I've heard mixed things from OSAC around the new trailhead, for example, about, we obviously use the open space funds to build a road.
Right.
I believe that every time we build a road, it frustrates me that we also don't build bike paths and pedestrian paths and amenities for cyclists and pedestrians. And I think we should spend as much money on cyclists and pedestrians as we do on roads. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think we should. Cars are, to me, bikes and pedestrians are just as important. Yet I cannot get a solid answer from OSAC around whether or not we should use the open space funds to build amenities that pedestrians and cyclists would be able to use at that trailhead. I think Mark's, I don't know if this is where he's going, but what inspired me is as we deplete these funds, I like the committee. I think the committee should exist in 5, 10 years after or 20 years after we've depleted all those funds. But I think that secondary objective, how do you take advantage of the open space that we have, might become a primary objective.
Sure.
So I do appreciate the response, and you see it's sort of subtly addressed in the work plan. So hopefully we'll get that recommendation this year.
Yeah, and I think you'll see, our open space committee has kind of evolved. I mean, we've got several new members in the last year, and so I think a strong, cohesive voice may be, because we've got a lot of new people and we're trying to make sure that everybody has their say in things. But I think you'll see that as we review their development plans, we do have a lot of comments on, how do we get from here to here, and connectivity with bikes. I mean, I'm a very avid cyclist myself, and so I'm certainly a proponent of ways that we can make short trips in our small town without having to get in a car. So I certainly am in favor of that.
Good.
And I've obviously had the opportunity to work with OSAC for the last year and a half, and I just want to say thank you to OSAC. I think this is a very thoughtful work plan, but I also really appreciate the efforts you guys are making to work more closely with ProStack. I think the two of you are absolutely the brains behind the open space and the parks in our community, and there's no more land we can buy. We're kind of running out of land, and so the fact that the two of you are working together to figure out how do we get the best possible use out of the land we do have is really fabulous, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, anything further, or I'll entertain a motion to approve the OSAC 2020 work plan.
I make a motion to approve the 2020 OSAC work plan.
Okay, motion by Trustee Hammerly, second by Trustee Lish. All those in favor? All right, passes unanimous. Thanks again for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel.
All right, we are on to item number 5, Happy City Master Plan presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Mitchell is here from Happy City. Good to see you. As well as members of CAPS. Thanks for coming down, guys. And Dina Miller, who's our staff liaison.
Trustees,
Hi,
Mayor,
welcome.
everybody else, thank you for coming. Nice to see you. I have a short presentation prepared. If you'd like, we can start with that and then get on to any.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Oh. Here we are.
Now, this is yours your presentation? Yes. Okay. Do you want me to make it big?
Yeah,
the view.
Do that. We've been hard at work since November, since we last spoke and saw you, getting further consultation and input, and working towards a final plan, which has been recommended to be presented to you here on time with the schedule we'd started with. I think the first thing to flag are a couple of the key changes that we've had since the meeting with you on November 18th. The biggest one is that the 5th big idea, which we called Elevate Social Capital, has been changed to Elevate Creative Capital. This was done with the guidance of the CAPS committee and town staff. And the idea here is to focus more on Superior's creative sector and identify ways to specifically work with people who are in that community already and identify ways to grow it while shifting some of the social components into the events and programming. Beyond that, we have gone into more detail about what these ideas look like, as well as the ways that they can be implemented. So we've added clarity around that, but we've done so while attempting or aiming to create a framework and equip CAPS and town staff with a series of tools through which they can implement the creative placemaking master plan without going into so much detail that we're prescribing how individual sites will look and limiting flexibility and adaptability to changing contexts within the town. And then two things that were specific to the previous board meeting. One, you requested further information about the grants and which would be most suitable for Superior. And so we've gone into more detail with the grants. We've narrowed that list, provided more detail about which ones can be, or which we think are best for the town to pursue. And we've ordered them in a way that highlights which are most promising for the plan and the town. And then the second one was about ensuring that this was a plan that, when implemented, helped people feel like we are in Superior when we arrive. And so we've re-emphasized or created a deeper emphasis on the clustering of activities and allocated a slight increase in funding to create more iconic pieces of public art that can be implemented here. And that will start already in 2020 with the Prairie Dogs, which 12 statues will be implemented within the town, as well as a number of other pieces of art. And with that, I'll perhaps continue. Even with these adjustments and with continuing to work with CAPS and with the general public at the last event, the Don We Now Are Ugly Sweater activity, which was wonderful to see some of you at, we've always had the same question in mind, which is how can we elevate Superior's identity and support positive change while celebrating the town's cherished assets? And well, we did that through a Made in Superior process. This started on June 1st with project initiation. We then had a series of walking tours with the CAPS committee and town staff. We conducted interviews with an array of subject matter experts and local actors, including a number of you. We conducted the Wellbeing Workshop, and then had the Superior Made event pop up, which was the first of 5 public events. Through the rest of the summer and into the fall, we had these events. And we also recognize that not everybody is able to make it out to these types of activities, that there are different employment schedules and kids and others to look after. So we also had the digital engagement, where we received 350 responses over 2 rounds of engagement that took place just over a month. And after developing and refining the plan with CAPS through a series of meetings we presented to you on the 18th, took into account your thoughts on that, hosted the final event on December 7th, final open house, and are here now after a regular guidance and stewardship from the CAPS committee to reach this point. And then even beyond CAPS, we have taken your guidance into account, as well as the town staff who've been excellent to work with. And even when we're not in direct contact with representatives from the town of Superior, we've always had the comprehensive plan, the town board goals in mind, as well as the placemaking master plan goals, which were included in the RFP. And then early in this process, right at the beginning, in fact, we created well-being principles. We created them here in Superior and then adjusted them to meet the recommendations CAPS had suggested. And all of this has helped to inform the 5 recommendations that the 5 high-level recommendations that we have for creative placemaking in Superior. And those are the art path, mobility freedom for all, public art, events and programming, and opportunities to elevate creative capital. And recognizing the need to ensure that there was this clear idea that you were seeing public art and you understood you were in Superior, while also endeavoring to balance the new art benefits throughout the town. We've identified a series of clusters that we think fulfill both of these goals. This also is really very much in the spirit of the Superior Art Path. Here we've sought to enhance the things that are already celebrated in town, the desire for fantastic outdoor space, reinforcing what is already happening here, but at the same time recognizing that there are some needs and aspirations. We're talking about the need to have opportunities to walk and cycle safely and comfortably through town. Well, beyond simply enhancing public space and the outdoor assets that the town has, this helps to accomplish that. And in doing so, it's also helping to deliver high-quality public art to the town. So through each of these big ideas and then many of the small ideas, we've tried to achieve this triple win of, celebrating what's here, meeting needs and aspirations that we've heard, and ensuring that all of this is coming through a culture, arts, and public space lens. And you'll note that we've included the master plan goals as well as the principles that these ideas achieve. And most of these big ideas achieve 3/4 of the master plan goals, if not more. And I think one achieves 4 of the principles and the rest achieve either 6 or 7 of the well-being principles. So what we're aiming to do here is deliver across the board in boosting well-being, creating art, and celebrating the assets that Superior has. Mobility Freedom for All builds on this art path, creating connections and safe ways to get across town. We had a clear eye on Superior's commercial centers with the art path, as well as the schools, and then particularly with Mobility Freedom for All, we see an important connection to the schools. Making it safe for children to get around is a fundamental goal, I think, that every town has or should have. But then there's also a strong economic case for it. One of the most promising grants that we came across was from the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Safe Routes to School grant program, which operates on a biannual basis and offers grants of $100,000 to $300,000, I think a total budget of $500,000 to actually conduct these things, as well as some additional opportunities. And I think I mentioned last time that, Superior is an affluent town, and a lot of the arts grants tend to focus on an equity or equality perspective where you need to justify it from an income position and ensuring socioeconomic diversity, whereas a lot of the activity grants are around safety and supporting active mobility. And so with the first 2 big ideas here, we aim to bring those together and help, ensure that the budget that the town has put aside for this for the next 5 years is actually an investment that can be extended beyond simply what the town of Superior is going to put into this, that there are other organizations that will support it as well. Public art was, of course, fundamental to this, and ensuring that that it was clear that you're in Superior, that it was going to reflect the interests and desires of the town, while also enhancing a sense of place attachment here. That was a really big one. We also wanted to, pique the interest of some of the neighboring towns and let them know that, the arts and culture are thriving in Superior as well. The idea there is to help drive more people into town. At the same time, there's such a high rate of volunteerism here that we want to make sure that that is something that can be supported as well. Beyond public art, which there are a few items that are set to be implemented. So the prairie dogs are going in this year. The art wraps on the bus shelters are also going in. There's other discussions about how the 1500 Colton site is going to include art. So I commend you on the inclusion of gallery space in the preliminary plan from what we've seen, as well as some other pieces that were available, and we'll see how much time and energy everybody has for implementing this year. Now, events and programming, this was something about just enhancing a key piece that people in Superior already loved. This was across the board incredibly popular, and we saw this, underlying piece was just about strengthening social connection, that there was a real opportunity to bring people together to an even greater extent than is happening today. And it's already doing really well, but this is a multi-pronged approach to doing so, from bigger events such as the main event, Superior Spectacular, which the Culture, Arts, and Public Space Committee has chosen to pursue for 2020, to quite small things such as neighborhood block parties. And the idea with the block parties, we've set aside a small budget for town staff to help facilitate it, but just one weekend in the summer, bylaws about having parties in the street are relaxed, and town staff are able to help facilitate street closures and allow neighbors who choose to have this type of party. So effectively reduce the barrier of entry to conduct these type of activities. And then, we've heard a lot about food trucks and the strong desire for an all-ages public space, and 1500 Colton is extremely promising in this regard. And with the food trucks, You note, as I heard in the earlier discussion, about the need to relax covenants in downtown Superior, which they seem to be supportive of, so that's excellent to hear as well. And then finally, we have the Elevate Creative Capital, and here, we're looking at identifying who's part of this sector and listening to them on a regular basis. So the idea would be to craft a survey on an annual basis and conduct that annually, but conduct the same one. So A, really cost effective. B, it allows for a longitudinal analysis. So you can see how the plan is performing from the perspective of Superior's creative sector. There's also the idea that an award could be added to the Chamber of Commerce around Superior's best creative sector. I noticed, I think the newest award out there is around young leadership or young economic leadership. So this could be another way of highlighting what Superior has and ensuring that, the array of rosters for artists that already exist in Colorado includes all of those in Superior. And we see this as sort of a cost-effective way to effectively self-fulfill Superior's creative sector aspirations, where it's going to be possible to, other creatives who don't live in Superior can look over and say, like, oh, these are all the things that this town is doing for us, in addition to all the physical interventions that we're seeing and the events and programming that are going on here. And so we see this as a really cost-effective way to help attract even more creatives to the city. Of course, budget is a fundamental role in this. For simplicity's sake, we've just done pie charts here. I think the key thing to recognize is that currently the 2020 budget is $197,500, while the remaining budgets are $150,000. As I mentioned previously, we have highlighted a series of grants that we think are very promising for the town to pursue, and in doing so, they can extend these budgets. Beyond that, we've noted in the plan that there are some pretty significant projects, such as the Art Path, that will be ongoing, that it may be difficult, in 2020 to see what's going on in 2024. And so we recommend that with careful consideration and clear case-by-case justification, that CAPS has the ability to roll over some of that funding where something has been delayed for a clear and justifiable reason. And building on the partnerships and funding piece, we've identified a series of partners. We consider these potential partners and are certain that there are even more that will be highlighted or discovered as this work continues. We think there's, you were commending ProStack and OSAC for working so closely together, and we see CAPS having a similar opportunity with this plan, because it's certainly not something that any one group can achieve on their own, and this is yet another way to strengthen social connection within the town and create this cooperative atmosphere that in Happy Cities research we've found to be so fundamental to well-being. And I think with that, I'll hand the mic over to you and hear what you have to think about this.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Questions from the board?
Mitchell, thanks, and I appreciate you guys tweaking the slides based on the stuff I found bothered you with last week.
That was a really good one. I'll say, like, classic Canadian error, where, like, yep, square state, that's okay.
We don't have to get into it. That's no worries at all. The states are they're all square states anyways, so it's no big deal. And a question on slide 8, the mobility and freedom for all. In the master plan document, it talked about 2 locations for artistic bump outs over the next the 5-year plan. And I couldn't quite identify if those had already been identified or if that's sort of just something that we want to work on, because I want to be careful, because I think one of them is Marshall and Sycamore, because the TSC has already started going down the path of making structural changes so that we're not duplicating efforts. And it's just, I want to make sure that at least at the staff level we're coordinated so that whatever is identified here is worked in conjunction, potentially, for that, if we're already making progress here, that we can move those resources quickly to something else.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one is 76th and Sycamore,
right?
Which we've heard, like, that was a very high concern among many residents. The other was around Marshall Road. So if that is already being implemented elsewhere, then I think that's even better in terms of this plan. As you'll note, as you look through this document, we have included more points where these interventions can take place than funding is available. And so we've recommended some of the key ones. So 76th and Sycamore is the one that we think is, most important to get done. Beyond that, this is where additional grant funding would help to justify the extension of some of these interventions.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm just looking here. Okay. But I think there's 7 sites, and we're including funding for 2 right now.
Okay, yeah, and maybe I missed in the appendices. I didn't see those in an appendix. Maybe I missed it. I apologize.
I'd like to add to the answer and say that I've already met with our Public Works Director, who's also the liaison to the TSC, and he's very amenable to the 76th and Sycamore bump out project, as well as the second one you mentioned. And then he's also identified some other intersections that we didn't know about along the Coal Creek Drive, if you're all familiar, or no, Coal Creek Circle, sorry. Coal Creek Circle right near the Colton building. Excuse me, no.
Rock Creek Circle.
That's Rock Creek Circle, sorry. So he's identified some intersections there that would be helpful to have this concept designed implemented as well. So we're working on partnering with Public Works to implement these things.
That's exactly what I want to hear. I wanted to make sure that, because the data is sourced differently for the 2 groups, so I want to make sure that we're marrying it up appropriately. And then really just one other question, relative to the additional funding options. I think it's page 13. I mean, I love the list. It's very comprehensive, but I also know grant writing takes a tremendous amount of time and resources. What is the scope? It's not part of the 150, so what is the scope in terms of applying to and trying to secure those grants relative to staff?
Well, so there's a couple of approaches that could be taken there. The first is that almost every year except 2024, the CAPS committee has been allocated money to use as they see fit. So in exploring some of this grant writing potential, should they determine that it's going to be too much work for them to take part in, they are able to dedicate some of the funds that they have available for either a consultant or I'm not exactly sure how it works internally, if CAPS was going to be giving funding to town staff, how that might work, but there's some flexibility to pursue that.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, others? Is there anyone from CAPS that would like to speak, or any members of the public that would like to have public comment on this, or any? If you want to. Question was about prairie dogs. You want to explain that?
Yes. Yeah, so those are a series of statues. There will be 12 in total. They actually precede the master plan, and it will be coming in, but perhaps someone from CAPS can go into more detail about them.
Where would they be installed?
Well, we've recommended a series of locations for them, so there's 12. The idea is that they could either be clustered in certain locations or that they could be more spread out. I think along the way there was also discussion that there could be sponsorship from local businesses to have them in front a little bit.
I think they're adorable. Some people are mortified by it.
So as the liaison, so question about the prairie dogs. So it's been a really fun conversation. One of the, so Chicago had it, I don't know if you spent any time with Chicago, but they have the, okay. You know, what's somebody remember, the cow?
The cows.
Right. So it's a scaled down version of what Chicago's done with the cows. So it would be lovely if we could get some businesses to sponsor it, but ultimately we will receive applications from local artists in the community who will receive their prairie dog to decorate. And I believe there will be a stipend that is available to the artist. I'm getting head nods, and so that process will be kicked off.
So are these large-scale prairie dogs then? I mean, are they?
The size of the prairie dog is, I think, about 2.5, 3 feet. 4 feet. You didn't let me finish. 2.5 to 3 plus 1 is what I was going to say. So, right. Thank you for your questions about CAPS. We want to talk about the master plan. CAPS is actually, I'm the liaison. It's a great committee. They meet the second and fourth Thursday of every month. A more formal meeting on the fourth Thursday of the month here in Town Hall. The second Thursday, usually, they're all posted on the website, and I believe there's some vacancies that are available. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to apply to participate in the committee. So it's a lot of fun. So I don't know if we'll have other questions. Mitchell, I just really wanted to thank you for the work that you and your team has done. It's really been remarkable. The way we've engaged the community, the way you engaged certain stakeholders in the community, town staff, the committee itself, really just fantastic. So really proud of the work you've done, proud of the work that the committee's done, and frankly, just proud of the community. This is something that we're going to anchor to for a lot of different things. Whether or not if somebody comes in with an idea about how to bring music or some local gathering, this is something that we could look to and say, okay, does this meet any of our sort of key tenets that we're trying to build out here? There's a tremendous amount of detail, everything from funding. So really, you, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, you've not only met my personal expectations and the town's expectations, but I think you far exceeded them. So fantastic job. Thank you.
Wow. I really appreciate that. And certainly, CAPS played a huge role in reaching this point. It wouldn't have been possible without their consistent guidance and support and, the regular meetings, but also, every event that we held, huge volunteerism that, we see that across Superior. I mean, it's in the data, but we got to see it firsthand over and over again in this work. So.
Right. Sometimes when I look at other master plans that have been done, you can see how quickly they get dated very quickly. This is a really I think this will really stand the test of time. This will be a bit of a timeless document. And, I'm sure 10 years from now, we'll look at this and say, oh, what were they thinking? But for the next 5 to 7 years, this is fantastic. It is a great map, and I'm really excited about the journey that you started and we're going to finish. So.
Well, you started it. I'm just helping facilitate it. So, Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. I will just say that I think probably the highest compliment that we got from CAPS was in a meeting in January when someone said, you've really listened to our ideas, and I see them reflected here. And it's pretty easy to make something beautiful and be like, here you go. It's a lot harder to make sure that what you're doing reflects all of the needs and aspirations of a town of 13,500 where all sorts of different views come into mind. So that was for sure a huge part of what we've been doing, and it certainly has been facilitated by people here and some others who aren't here.
I want to take a second to just thank CAPS for starting down this process, finding Happy City, and just facilitating this whole process. This is step one in the process, and I really feel like it's going to be CAPS's responsibility to hold us to the commitments that we're reaching in this document to make sure that we actually execute on them, because I think that this is really going to be a defining opportunity for us to really create that sense of identity that I think as a bedroom community we're currently lacking, and that we have the ability to start kind of building a little character and identity in this community. I think it's a wonderful document. Mitchell, you and your team have done an amazing job, and so thank you very much for all your hard work. Thank you to CAPS for doing this. But now let's make sure that we actually keep to this commitment, and that it just doesn't end up being a comprehensive plan that isn't executed upon, because a lot of times things like that happen, right? You spend a bunch of time, money, and effort on a comprehensive plan, and then things change or they start to collect dust, and I just wouldn't want to see us lose the opportunity that we have right now to actually execute on this thing. So hold us to it is my recommendation. But thank you. I think it's great.
All right, anyone else? Yeah, it's been fun for me to see the evolution of CAPS. The beginnings was when we formed this little group to create some art for an underpass or two, and that quickly grew into a committee structure that we formalized, and then to have this plan come out of the committee has just been great to see the whole evolution. So appreciate everyone's passion and interest to make this happen. And so I love plans and love having a plan, so it's great to have this plan. And I echo my colleagues' comments around let's use this plan and make it happen. So thank you. All right, with that, we are on to our final item, which is reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start? Ken.
On February 13th, I attended the monthly ACES meeting. There were several items discussed, but significantly, the committee spent a large amount of time discussing the Excel Partners in Energy program and steps taken thus far, and there will be more to come as final results come in.
All right, thanks, Ken. Laura?
I have nothing to report.
Thanks. Kevin?
I have no detail to report. Want to thank Sandy again for stepping in as to help facilitate us a couple weeks ago, so thank you for that. And as a reminder, in 2 weeks, I do have a flight at about 11:30 p.m., maybe 11:15, so I'll depart here about 9:15, so hopefully the meeting won't end by 9:15, but I may need to step out a few minutes early for the meeting in 2 weeks.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Mark?
Thanks, Sandy, for covering for us while we were gone. I was in trial.
Did you win?
We had split verdict, so everybody lost and everybody won. So it depends on your perspective. Broomfield City Council meeting tomorrow night. They'll be considering leaving the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority. So email City Council at council@broomfieldcitycouncil.org, or consider attending the Broomfield City Council meeting tomorrow night with your public comments of support and efforts to withdraw from the Jefferson Parkway Highway Authority. In my opinion, that Highway Authority there's 3 members. It's Arvada, Broomfield, and then Jeffco. So with Broomfield leaving, that is a major funding source to the highway project, and hopefully will be the beginning of the end for that project. So there is considerable concern with the new city council in Broomfield with respect to the plutonium findings that came in the right of way with the soil samples that were released a couple months ago. So it's good that I appreciate that Broomfield is keeping this issue top of mind, and that they are, acting in support of public health and safety. So I would urge my fellow board members and any members of the public to consider attending the meeting tomorrow, or at a minimum, sending an email to the council with your support. That's it. Thanks.
Last week, I attended the monthly ProStack meeting. A couple of key points for the board. First, ProStack wrapped up on a few of the key aspects for the scope of services for the PROS master plan, which is going to go out to bid, I think, immediately, if it's not already. Soon, really soon. They're tweaking some of the language. Further, ProStack did discuss the current draft plans of 1500 Colton Road. Overall, ProStack does like the layout, but does note there's a deficiency of light recreation amenities, and that was something that they identified on their amenity list, recognizing that there may not be space, but it is something that they wanted to bring up. In addition, the lack of detail on programming and the potential number of FTEs that are needed for the site should have been figured out in conjunction with the amount of space needed for them, since there's only a certain amount of office space. And they do recognize that there's a new draft that'll be coming from Oz prior to the March 9th meeting. So, okay. And then I have asked the ProStack members, at least individually, since they won't have a meeting prior to our next board meeting, to weigh in and look at the draft and let us know if it kind of meets on an individual basis more of what they're hoping for. But overall, 1500 Colton, they're directionally comfortable with it, and I think their perspective is this is really going to help flush out what the downtown Superior space might need in conjunction with 1500 Colton Road, given the timeline differences between the two. So, that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Neil. Sandy?
I've been sick pretty much since our last board meeting, but I did attend the OSAC meeting a couple of days after our last board meeting, and one of the things that I'm really encouraged by, OSAC and PROSTAC have been working together on a joint statement for their vision for Town 15, and they're doing some really good work there that's capturing the vision of both groups, and I'm really appreciative of the work they've done there. Hopefully we'll be seeing it come from those committees soon. They're still finalizing it, but really appreciate the work of both those committees to come up with a shared vision for what they believe should happen with Town 15.
All right, thanks, Eddie. And thank you for covering the February 10th meeting as well. On January 29th, I attended a conference on ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units. This was a conference that was organized by Metro Mayors. The purpose was to educate elected officials and town staffs across the metro area about ADUs and what they offer to communities in terms of affordable housing and different size housing options. Currently, Superior does not have anything in our code that would allow the development of ADUs, and Original Town is probably the only part of Superior that it would even be feasible in, because the rest of the town, it wouldn't work because of the planned development nature. This has been discussed and encouraged by the Planning Commission during their Northwest sub-area study discussions, and I understand there was a brief discussion on this at the February 10th meeting, and I just want the board to know that I'm in full support of moving forward on developing ADU plans for the town. I think it would be a small step in the right direction for new housing options and help with affordability for those that would like those options. And I found this seminar very, very informative, and came away with a book that I shared with Bob McCool, Planning Commission chairperson, and so look forward to continuing those discussions. February 10th through 12th, I was in Los Angeles with the town manager and Adam Hughes, our economic development consultant. We were attending the Entertainment Experience Evolution Conference, and the purpose of that conference was to just learn about the different trends that are affecting how people are spending their out-of-home entertainment time and money, and some very interesting insights into that. And we also made some contacts with some businesses and concepts that might be applicable to Superior, and so that was kind of the ultimate purpose, was to hopefully attract some new business to town. Attended the CML, Colorado Municipal League Policy Committee meeting on the 14th, and the 19th attended the DRCOG meeting in Denver, and I want to thank Sandy and town staff and Commuting Solutions for applying for a transportation demand management project for downtown Superior. DRCOG awarded $141,000 to that effort, and it was kind of the last project selected in that round of funding, but the purpose of that funding is to develop innovative ideas and solutions to help people get out of cars and take advantage of other transit opportunities. So we're happy for our regional partners' support on helping downtown Superior and the town of Superior toward that effort. And then just finally a reminder that I will be absent for the next meeting, March 9th. Mayor Pro Tem Lasis will be conducting the meeting. I'll be in Washington, D.C., attending the National League of Cities Conference and the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition annual trip to D.C. on the second half of that week. And that is it. Anything from you, Matt?
I'm getting ready to ask you a question if it's not part of your report, sorry.
Okay. Well, I was just going to mention to the board that Leslie received during the meeting the updated plan for 1500 Colton from Oz. I forwarded it on to you. I think the board was going to push that out to get comments from the community, as we will as well through our publications.
I understand we've received a one-time payment from Downtown Superior.
We did.
Okay.
Last
Can you
week.
just give the community a little bit of info on that?
As part of the agreements for the Downtown Superior project and the plan development, they had a school impact fee. It was required for the project, and they could either provide the land, which they did have 2 acres, I think it was roughly 2 acres in their plan for a school site, which was targeted for a preschool through the Boulder Valley School District, if the school district decided they wanted to build a preschool there, or they could pay the town a fee in lieu of $2 million if the school district decided not to move forward with a preschool. I think it was in 2016 or something like that, the school district decided that they were not going to build a preschool. They're going to do all their preschools at their current campuses. As a result, they were required to pay us the $2 million at the time a final development plan was approved for properties surrounding that school site, which happened last year with the toll application. And with the closing that occurred last week with toll, we received electronic funds transfer of $2 million.
So I'd love to maybe suggest we talk about, I recognize we're not going to earmark it for a specific purpose, but I don't necessarily want the $2 million just rolled into the general fund either. You know, it's a bit of a windfall, and so maybe we could just talk about it as a board, kind of the overall direction for kind of what we want to do with that $2 million.
And that was anticipated in the 2020 budget, and it's part of the 2020 budget document. Yeah.
Okay.
I
didn't realize it was in the 2020 budget. That's right. That's a good reminder.
Yep.
Okay.
That was it for me.
Nothing legal to report. Thank you. And Phyllis. All right. Anyone have anything further? All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.